Hi guys, it's me, Chazza HDN. Welcome to race day in Qatar for the penultimate race of 2025. And this is the first Grand Prix of 2025 where we can crown officially a Drivers' World Champion. Qualifying yesterday has set the stage for hopefully in a race that will be a bit more interesting than what we had with the sprint race, which was a procession. Thankfully, though, we have a mandatory at least two-stop race for today's Grand Prix. So at least the strategy side is going to be interesting on that side, how teams conduct this race. So maybe we'll get some people moving through the order that way. But Lando Norris, of course, comes into this Grand Prix, the championship leader, and is 22 points clear of Oscar Piastri, 25 points clear of Max Verstappen. And quite simply for Lando Norris, who is starting second today behind his teammate Piastri with Max Verstappen in third, Lando Norris simply must win this Grand Prix today. If he does, then it does not matter what Piastri and Verstappen do. Where they finish, Lando Norris will be world champion. Simply, for Lando Norris, he must outscore Oscar Piastri by 3 points. So even if, say somehow Mercedes were to win the race, if Lando was to then finish in second with Piastri third and Verstappen further back, Lando would still be the world champion. That is how close it is for Lando Norris. He could be just, a good start to the race away from winning the world championship. Of course, that race down to the first corner on the first lap is going to be really what decides the race in terms of who wins and who finishes on the podium. So we could very well see Lando Norris crowned as the world champion. But we could also very well see the championship go down to the final race in Abu Dhabi. But if that does happen, who will be Lando Norris's challengers? Will it be just his teammate Oscar Piastri? Or will it be Piastri and Verstappen? Or will it be just Max Verstappen? We don't know. That's why we are covering this race and intently we'll be looking to see just what happens with those three drivers who are very likely to finish in the top three. And like I said, the start of this race, it's a shame to say it because I would love if it was like a proper race from lap 1 until lap 57 in terms of not knowing, truly what the result is going to be until the very end. But the start of this race is absolutely crucial to who wins possibly the world championship. And that is really what we're going to be focusing a lot on. But yeah, we'll see whether the championship, of course, today will be decided. And we'll see what happens in general with this Grand Prix. Hope you guys are well. Hope you, if you joined me yesterday, hope you're doing well. If you're joining me for the first time this weekend, no matter what time zone you're in, what part of the world you're from, hope you're all having as best a time as possible, and I hope you will join me today in watching along and enjoying the Qatar Grand Prix. I will be, I'm pretty sure this time, I will be joined by my co-commentator, Niblo, who should be joining us in about an hour and 20 minutes from now, which will be, about half an hour before the race. He'll be joining us to also take you through the events of the Qatar Grand Prix. So yeah, we'll get him. I'll get his thoughts ahead of the race and all of that stuff. But yeah, even though overtaking is going to prove very difficult, no doubt, I am still looking forward to this race because with the two-stop mandatory for this race, we are still going to get some interesting things on strategy because let's say everyone does a two-stop race, which I think they will. How you go about that two-stop race is what is going to be so interesting because you could with, say, your first stint, you could go pretty long and nearly to, say, lap 25 if you've got a fresh set of tyres, before making that first pit stop and then going long again, or maybe having a shorter middle stint or having a shorter first stint. Again, it's really interesting to see what teams decide to do in in that way. We did have a mandatory 2-stop race. I think, was it 2023? We had a mandatory 2-stop race, and that didn't prove to be that great in the end, in terms of offering, a great race. But I'm not necessarily sure it was down to the mandatory 2 stops. I don't think it helped the race, but I don't think it massively hindered it either. I don't think the field was that competitive in that weekend, to be honest. So, yeah, we'll see what that does, but it will be interesting, at least, like I said, to see who decides to go about that 2-stop in whatever way they want to. And of course, we will go through in the build up to the race, race strategy. Hopefully, I'll be able to let you guys know who has what tyres available, because of course that is very important for the race. I also will go through what Pirelli have said is the quickest race strategy for this Grand Prix in Qatar. Of course, it has to be at least a 2-stop strategy for the Grand Prix. So yeah, we'll go through that, and we'll go through what we usually do in the build-up to a Grand Prix. All of the data from yesterday to understand why we've got the grid we've got. We'll also look at the race pace from the sprint, just to show what the pace was like and whether, that will continue, that type of pace we saw in the sprint with all the teams into the race. It's a good indicator as to what could happen in this race for sure, given that the conditions are the same as they were yesterday. And also the race starting, only a couple hours after the sprint was yesterday. So yeah, the conditions in terms of temperature, not going to be massively different from the sprint. Of course, I'll get into my own predictions for the race. We'll give you some key stats ahead of the race as well that you guys need to know of. And then obviously, in just under 2 hours, just over an hour and 45 from now, we will get into the race and we'll see truly what goes down in the desert in Qatar. But one final thing, make sure to vote in the poll running in the chat. I've asked you guys, as usual, who do you think is going to win the race? And the options are Max Verstappen, Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri, and George Russell. Those are easily the 4 most likely drivers to win this race. So out of those 4, who do you think wins the race? And also, in the chat, let me know, do you think Lando Norris will win the championship today or not? Let me know, and we'll see what you guys have to say about that. And of course, in general, let me know your thoughts ahead of the race. What do you think is going to happen? What are your predictions? What's your top 3, your top 5? Let me know in the chat. And of course, eventually in probably 30 to 45 minutes from now, I'll get on to a load of your comments before we get Nib on the stream. Anyway, let's get into what happened in qualifying. As a session that wasn't as competitive in the end as we hoped in terms of the front runners. In the midfield, it was very competitive, but the front runners, it kind of ended up being very, what's the best way to describe it? It was just very dominant, I guess you could say, from McLaren. 1/4 of a second clear of Max Verstappen in the Red Bull, which is a pretty, I wouldn't say massive gap around a track like this, because it is a short-ish circuit, but that's a pretty clear gap to have over the course of a 80-second or just under 80-second lap. So McLaren have by far the fastest car in this weekend's Grand Prix. There's no doubt about that. I didn't quite think that going into qualifying. I thought McLaren had the fastest car, but I didn't think it was by as much of a margin as it proved to be in qualifying itself. But yeah, I'd be very surprised if they were stopped in the race today, because, I mean, Verstappen or Russell are going to have amazing generational level starts to this race if they're going to somehow get into the lead ahead of those McLarens, unless, of course, the McLarens collide with each other, which I'm sure there's plenty out there hoping that will happen. But Piastri was the man who got pole. Lando, in the end, threw away the chance at getting pole. He did a great first lap in Q3 and then made a mistake on his final run. That opened the door for Piastri to improve, and he did by a tenth of a second or so. And Piastri took pole position. So Lando potentially has more in the bag, but Piastri delivered and Lando did not. Similar to what we have seen for a lot of this season, but Piastri, of course, has just come off the back of terrible form. Remember, Oscar Piastri still has not finished on the podium in 2025 since the Italian Grand Prix. That was, almost 3 months ago. So that really has been, what's cost Piastri in the end. The consistency dropped off a cliff for the Australian, even though he still has a chance at the championship. So yeah, McLaren, the fastest team, no doubt about it. Max Verstappen third, Russell fourth. Verstappen and Russell still, I thought, drove really well yesterday, but their cars just weren't on the same level as the McLaren. That's pretty clear to see. So yeah, Verstappen and Russell, you can't complain about what they did. Be interesting, of course, see them on the same road of the grid, see what will go down there. Obviously, those two always getting into close contact with each other whenever they're near each other. Kimi Antonelli fifth. In terms of the position, Antonelli did the result he got the result he should have got. Still, though, I think he could have been maybe a tenth of a second closer to Russell. But in terms of position, like I said, he's exactly where he needs to be. And I'd be very surprised if he doesn't finish at least fifth in the race today. Isaac Hadjar then in sixth. What a drive from Hadjar. Yet again, another stonking qualifying lap. Sixth on the grid in a car that I don't think is necessarily the fastest midfield car. So that is a stunning lap from Hadjar. Just ahead of Carlos Sainz, who did a good effort. Seventh on the grid. Alonso eighth. Alonso will be disappointed. I think Alonso could have at least been ahead of Sainz and maybe Hadjar. So yeah, Alonso will be a bit disappointed with that. But we know the Williams and the Aston Martin tend to be quicker in races than Racing Bulls are. So Alonso could probably repair some of that damage today. Pierre Gasly in ninth. Gasly, for me, was driver of the day in qualifying. Getting that car into ninth, a super result. Remember, he's had some great results here at this circuit in the past few years that we've been racing here. And ended up just ahead of the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc. A car that Jolyon Palmer said on F1 TV, and I think I'd have to agree, is probably the worst car on the grid this weekend. The only reason they're in the top 10 is because they've got a driver in Leclerc who, over a qualifying lap, is incredibly fast, is arguably the quickest, you could argue, at certain times. If they had no disrespect, a Nico Hulkenberg in that car, Ferrari would be pretty much at the back. So, yeah, Ferrari having an absolute disaster of a weekend. As I said in my qualifying stream, I thought this weekend would be poor for them, but this is even worse than my expectations. So, yeah, just a complete disaster for Ferrari. They have now dropped into the midfield. Thankfully for them, there's only, next weekend is the final race. So, not long until they can throw this car away. But that's your top 10. And then Hulkenberg in 11th. Hulkenberg doing a good job. Sauber just weren't or haven't really been this weekend top 10 material. They could, though, score a point or two in the race. They've been pretty good in the races as of late. But, yeah, I thought Hulkenberg did a good job nonetheless to get pretty much the best result that Sauber can get with that car. Liam Lawson in 12th. Lawson, not good enough. He's not been good enough all weekend. Hadjar up in 6th. Lawson should be in the top 10 and should be probably 8th or 9th on the grid, given where Hadjar was. But Lawson is in 12th. Still, there is a race. He's still in a decent enough position to where, he could maybe score a point or two. We'll see. But, yeah, not good enough from Lawson so far this weekend. Oliver Behrman, 13th. I can't complain about Behrman's performance. Haas are just not quick enough. They've got one of the slowest cars on the grid this weekend. Bortoletto in 14th. Bortoletto, I think, could have done a bit better. I think he could have ended up maybe 12th and maybe ahead of his teammate. So, yeah, it could have been at least a row on the grid higher in that Sauber. Alex Albon, 15th. Albon, terrible. Absolutely terrible. He is, that form from earlier in the season where he was so good, it's just completely gone. This is the worst Alex Albon that we've seen in the last few races. This is the worst Alex Albon we've seen since he was at Red Bull in 2020. He has not been this bad since he, joined Williams in 2022. He has been terrible in these last, 5-6 races. Sainz is now beating him like a drum. And Albon, absolutely nowhere. Albon really should have been making the top 10. But, 15th is nowhere near good enough. I'm sure he'll rise up the field and contend for a point, but he should be right in the mix, in the top 10, without a doubt. The Williams car has proven to be very fast this weekend, but, Albon, just on a different planet in a bad way. Yuki Tsunoda 16th. We talk about with the Red Bull, the second Red Bull, it's so hard to drive. It's different from what Max has. All of this rubbish. But, I think this weekend exemplifies why Tsunoda is not good enough for Red Bull, because in sprint qualifying and the sprint, he performed exactly how Red Bull want him to perform. He was 5th in sprint qualifying and he finished 5th, was it, in the sprint? That's, exactly what Red Bull want of him. Just, they're not wanting race wins. They know he can't win races in that car or even probably finish on the podium. But, finishing between 5th and 8th is probably where Tsunoda should be in that car. 16th on the grid, he's just resorted back to type, basically, back to what he's been doing 99% of this season. So you can't, at this point, you just can't defend Tsunoda. He clearly has shown this weekend that he can be quick and can do the job, but has then gone and proven that he can also be shit and completely terrible. So, Tsunoda, absolutely horrible, and I would be absolutely gobsmacked if he was in that Red Bull next season. He might not even be in Formula One next season at this rate with the way he's performing. But, we'll have to see. Esteban Ocon, 17th. Ocon, I think the only thing you could argue with Ocon is he could have maybe made Q2. But even if he did, it would have been, 15th, 14th? Who cares, really, about that? Ocon, I think, not benefiting from the pace of the car. The pace, obviously, not there in the Haas. And then 18th, just like he was in sprint qualifying, Lewis Hamilton. And the thing is with Hamilton, I mean, in terms of lap time, he ended up about, 4 to 5 tenths away from Leclerc. He should be quicker than that. He should be at least getting into Q2. But let's not pretend like all of Hamilton's results this weekend have been down to down to him not being good enough. The car is dreadful, and the car is mostly why he qualified 18th yesterday on Friday for the sprint, and is qualified 18th again. Yeah, he could be quicker, no doubt about it. He should be probably, I'd say, 3 to 4 tenths of a second faster than he is. But even if he was, he would still be, 13th, 14th? And we would still be saying, God, how poor is that? So I think people need to remember that. But even if he was performing to the level he should be, he would still be absolutely nowhere, because the car is absolutely terrible. Let's be fair. Lewis Hamilton is past his best. There is no doubt about it at this point. But let's be fair where we can. He's not entirely the problem with why he's so regularly slow in qualifying. In this instance, it's almost entirely down to the car being just dreadful to drive. Lance Stroll 19th, absolutely terrible performance, given that Aston Martin were probably in qualifying. Again, Alonso didn't do his best lap in Q3, which hurt his result at the end. I think Aston Martin were probably the fastest midfield team in qualifying. But even though they were, Lance Stroll still 19th, which just tells you everything you need to know about Lance Stroll. And then 20th, Franco Colapinto. Franco will be disappointed to be all the way down in 20th, given that his teammates in P9. Colapinto really should have been making at least Q2, given where Gasly is. But that's the grid for the Qatar Grand Prix. As of now, there are no changes to the grid. There might still be. Lewis Hamilton may, start from the pit lane, or something like that. We'll have to see. Maybe Tsunoda will. Again, I'll let you know when I hear any news regarding that. But at the minute, there are no changes to the grid. So that is your starting grid for the Qatar Grand Prix. But let's get into the sector time data to understand why it ended up the way it did. And also, just to observe how god-awful Ferrari are. And you're going to be shocked just how bad some of these sector times are for them. So the first sector, for the front-running teams, all within half a tenth, pretty much like they were in sprint qualifying. Alonso then a couple tenths back. And then 3 tenths away from the front runners, you've got all of the midfield teams, all very closely packed together. But look at Ferrari. The second worst team in the first sector in qualifying was Ferrari. And only barely ahead of Williams, who, I must say, I know, they're not losing that much time to the other midfield teams in the first sector, but for them to be the slowest midfield team in this part of the lap and still end up 7th on the grid is quite impressive. But yeah, 3.5 tenths off for Ferrari. Second worst team. Diabolical. Absolutely diabolical. To lose 3.5 tenths in half a minute, it's, that for certain midfield teams, you would say that's a bit poor. So yeah, I don't have the words to describe how bad, the situation is, quite frankly. The middle sector, McLaren, this is where they really started to show their quality. A few hundredths quicker than Mercedes. Red Bull really started to drop off the pace in the middle sector. 10.5 slower than McLaren. They needed to be at least a 10th quicker in this part of the lap to really keep it close, but they just couldn't keep up that speed from the first sector in the middle sector. The middle sector, you do have some more medium and slower speed corners, and we do know that the Red Bull is still weaker in that area. Remember, it's the front end of the car is better than it was, but it's still fundamentally not good. Racing Bulls then lapping at a good speed. So are Sauber, Williams, Aston Martin. But look all the way at the bottom. Ferrari in the middle sector were the slowest team. And what makes it even funnier is Charles Leclerc did the whole of qualifying, and all of his middle sector times that he did were still slower than what Lewis did with his best middle sector in Q1. Just showing you that the Ferrari failed to improve its form or grip through the session because Leclerc just could not match what Hamilton had done in the middle sector from the first part of qualifying. So, yeah, Ferrari, the slowest team. What can you say at this point? Thing is, though, as we move on to the final sector, you're going to see something very surprising, which is just baffling with Ferrari. And you can see, suddenly, after being basically the worst team in the first two sectors, suddenly they're now fourth quickest in the final sector. That car is just completely unpredictable, not only to drive, but in terms of where it's quick and where it isn't. Yeah, we can't understand it. I don't think even Ferrari can understand what their car is doing at this point, and they are just desperate for this season to finish, especially now they know that they're not going to win a race because they've got no pace to win any of these final couple races. McLaren also, though, let's go on to them very quick in the final sector. This final sector pace just solidified the pace they had overall, and McLaren nearly 0.2 of a second quicker than Red Bull and Mercedes. That is mostly why McLaren were the faster team yesterday. In the high-speed corners, that McLaren is just that slight bit better. And when I say slight bit, I'm talking, couple tenths of a second. That's the difference in the end between Piastri and the rest. Racing Bulls, Williams, Aston Martin looking good and pretty close, really, through the midfield in all of the sectors. But yeah, the funniest thing to look at through all of that data is Ferrari. I just don't understand how after the first two sectors they're the slowest team, and then suddenly they are within a tenth of Red Bull and Mercedes in the final sector. Again, completely baffling. We'll see what they do in the race today, but yeah, this car is just horrendous, quite frankly. But if I go back to the top 10 results, there you go. Let's go through what the pecking order is for the race. And it pretty much is the pecking order for the race, pretty much what it was in qualifying. McLaren have the fastest car, no doubt about it. They've got about a couple tenths advantage over Max in the Red Bull and Russell in the Mercedes. I would say I think Mercedes and Red Bull are on literally the same pace. I think the only thing separating those teams is the drivers. So that obviously helps Max slightly because Max is still, for me, just that slight bit better pace-wise than George Russell. And then in qualifying, you could argue Racing Bulls were the fastest midfield team. I still think it was Aston Martin who just didn't deliver in the end in Q3. But it was very close between those two teams. In the race, though, I think Williams will have the fourth fastest car. They always are quick in a race. Aston Martin, I think, will be fifth. Racing Bulls, I will go in sixth. And then seventh, probably... I think I'd probably go Ferrari, who I think will be a slight bit better today. 8th, Alpine. Ninth is a toss-up, obviously, between Haas and Sauber, and I can't decide. So, yeah, you can, let me know who you think will be the slowest team. But, yeah, it's going to be either Haas or Sauber in terms of who the slowest team is. But, yeah, in terms of the midfield, Williams, Aston Martin, Ferrari, and Racing Bulls all on similar pace. I think there's only going to be maybe a couple tenths of a second per lap separating those four teams. So I'm expecting a good close battle in those midfield positions from 6th to 10th and even 11th place. So keep your eye on that in the Grand Prix today. But clearly McLaren have got the fastest car. There is no doubt about it. If McLaren, at the start of the race, if they get away first and second through the first corner and end of the first lap, it's a 1-2, they will finish first and second. No doubt about it. The only way Verstappen or Russell beat McLaren today is either if McLaren have a DNF, a disqualification, or something seriously goes wrong for a McLaren in the race. Really slow pit stop, a driver spinning off and, losing loads of time. That's the only way McLaren lose today and lose a 1-2. That's the only way, because that car is just that bit too quick for the Red Bull and the Mercedes cars. That's the reality. Some may say sad reality going into this race, because I know a lot of you were hoping Max Verstappen would be right in there, getting maybe the win and forcing the championship to go down to the final race. But it is clearly advantage McLaren going into the race. A couple other things we'll look at before I get onto my own predictions for the race. Here are the best top speeds. This is the speed trap data from the speed trap located at the end of the pit straight going into turn 1. Not really much of interest in terms of the data here from what we normally see. Mercedes, Aston Martin, Red Bull, the top 3 teams. The only thing to note is Ferrari, the second slowest team in a straight line in qualifying. The only explanation for that is because they've been so bad through the corners, Ferrari have put a bit more wing on to try and help that. And if it has helped that, the grip, then it just shows you if they were running what they would consider a normal level of downforce for what they, were probably wanting to run with their wing levels this weekend, Ferrari would be potentially even worse than they are. So that car is genuinely very poor. That's the only explanation for why Ferrari are, the second slowest team down the straights. Racing Bulls, clearly they've compromised to a degree on top speed, but it paid off for them. Obviously, Isaac Hadjar getting into 6th place. But of course, if anyone gets within a second of Hadjar down that pit straight, he is going to be under threat quite a bit, especially if it's Alonso. Alonso has a 5 km/h advantage. And then, of course, DRS advantage as well. That's going to be quite an advantage for Alonso if he gets within a second of a Racing Bulls car. But yeah, Ferrari, if they, because normally they're in the top 2, top 3 in the speed traps, normally for a Grand Prix weekend. I'm just trying to imagine, if they were up there in the speed traps, how much worse could they have potentially been in qualifying? It's incredible to think about, because they were so bad yesterday that you struggle to think it could have been even worse, but it looks like it could have been. Here is next the sprint pace, the sprint race pace from the sprint race in Qatar. The sprint race taking place about 24 hours ago. And McLaren proving to be the fastest team. No surprise there. 0.2 quicker than Mercedes per lap, 0.3 of a second quicker than Red Bull per lap, and then a big drop off to the midfield. Aston Martin a second per lap off the pace. Williams pretty much the same. 1.2 seconds off the pace for Racing Bulls. And then Sauber, Haas and Ferrari and Alpine all about a second and a half off the pace. Ferrari had the second worst car in the sprint. Leclerc ended up finishing in 13th, I think it was, and ended up, I think, 35 seconds off Piastri after like 19 laps. That is, just incredible to think that, the Ferrari was that far off the pace. But it could very well happen today. They could be, if they have as bad of a race today as their sprint was yesterday, they could end up a lap down by the end of the Grand Prix. It is very much possible. To be a lap down, you're going to need to be, a second and a half a lap off the pace. So, and, in the sprint, they were a second and a half a lap off the pace. I don't think they'll be that, as far off the pace today as they were yesterday in the sprint. I think they'll be probably about a second off the pace in the race today. But if they somehow manage to be a second and a half a lap off the pace, they will get lapped with both cars will end up lapped. And that will be the icing on the cake of humiliation for Ferrari this weekend. In what could be, this could end up going down as Ferrari's worst weekend in years in terms of the performance level of the car this weekend. I struggle to think of many other races in the last few years where they've been this bad. Even back in 2020, they still managed to have quite a few races where they were in the top 5, top 6, even as a midfield team, with Leclerc, getting the most out of the car. But still with Leclerc getting the most out of the car, they are, absolutely terrible. So, we'll have to see what happens. If you're a Ferrari fan, you're gonna be you'll be watching this race behind a lot of things, because it's gonna be an absolute horror show. Just don't pay attention to the lap times or the gaps through the race, because it will probably make you want to throw up at times. Anyway, that's the sprint pace from the sprint race. Whether this will actually be the race pace as well that we see in the Grand Prix, we'll have to wait and see. It could very well be, because again, conditions very similar for the race compared to what it was like in the sprint. But we've seen times before where certain teams have been quick or very slow in the sprint, and then been the opposite in the race itself. So, we'll see ultimately where, we'll see ultimately where the pace lies and who ends up being on the pace and who doesn't. But here is, with my predicted gaps as well, my prediction for the race today. Oscar Piastri, I think, will hold on and win the race. It'll be his first race win since the Dutch Grand Prix at Zandvoort, which was 3 months ago. Max Verstappen will finish in second. Lando Norris will finish in third. The reason... Sorry, I just had to mute myself to cough because I was about to go all over the place there. The reason I'll go with Max ahead of Lando is because at the start, I think Max is going to absolutely go for it. And I think he'll send it right round the outside of Norris at turn 1 into turn 2 and take second place. And because it's so hard to overtake here, I think Max will hold on to second place. So the championship, in my view, will go down to the final race in Abu Dhabi. Norris, I think, will finish right behind Verstappen in third. And not too far behind, only a second or so behind will be George Russell in fourth. Don't count Russell out, by the way. Remember, Russell, he is the highest placed driver on the grid who is not fighting for the championship. So he doesn't have any pressure for the race today. So he can just absolutely go for it today. Whilst the top three have to be a bit mindful of going for certain overtakes and being, maybe as aggressive as they, would go if they didn't have any pressure on them. So keep your eye on George Russell. He could be a bit of a dark horse in that fight for the podium. Antonelli will be 25 seconds off the lead by the end in 5th. And then Carlos Sainz will be 6th. Alonso 7th. Leclerc will fight his way to 8th place. So we'll finish just behind Fernando Alonso. And then in 9th, Isaac Hadjar. And in 10th, Pierre Gasly. That's my top 10 for the race. Let me know, guys, either in the poll running of the chat or in the live chat itself. What are your predictions for the race? Give me your top 3, your top 5. And also, as I said at the top of the stream, let me know, do you think Lando Norris will win the championship today? Yes or no? Let me know before we get into the race itself. But before we go any further, just want to say make sure to subscribe for more content like this. Because, of course, next year we'll be doing plenty of qualifying and race watch-alongs and all of that stuff. And obviously I've got plenty of off-season winter break content planned for you guys as well. There you go, hour and 18 minutes to go until the race begins. So yeah, make sure to subscribe for more content like this. And also, smash that like button if you haven't already. We are on 13 likes. Let's try and get up to 25 plus likes if we can in the next half an hour. Be great if we could do that. But good to see you guys in chat. I can see you guys have all commented. Hello to Astro, Will, Dartlold Raven saying, hey, Jazza, mate, are you feeling better? Yep, feeling good. Hopefully you're good as well. Turbo Power, Cat. Who else have we got in the chat? Herman, Saragara, Yanni. Yeah, good to see all of you. And like I said, I will get to your comments soon. So just keep them coming. Couple things we're going to go on to, though, before we come to your comments in the chat. First thing we're going to do is go through race strategy for this Grand Prix. Again, it has to be a two-stop race. So the only options for the only options strategically are, to stop twice. There's no way really to do this race as a 3-stop and to, be quick enough to get a good result. So let me just find it quickly. Here we go. So Pirelli, they have predicted the quickest way to do this race is to start on the medium tyre, pit on lap 21, and then do about 25 laps on that tyre, which would take you to lap 46 on that second set of mediums, and then finish the race on a set of soft tyres. The other two-stop options are either start on the medium, go to lap 21, pit for the hard tyre, and then finish the race on a soft tyre. And then the third one is start on the medium, pit a couple laps sooner on lap 19, go onto the hard tyre, and pit a few laps sooner, and then go onto the medium tyre to finish. And also we have a couple more two-stop options where you could start on the hard tyre, pit on lap 19, and then go into 2 sets of mediums to finish the race. And then the fifth and final two-stop option is to start on the hard tyre, pit on lap 21, then go into a set of mediums, and then finish the race for the final, say, 12 laps on the soft compound tyre. So plenty of two-stop options. Most of them involve starting on the medium tyre. One thing, though, that I saw a tweet on X from Bernie Collins, who, of course, is the strategy person on Sky Sports F1. She's absolutely fantastic. She's one of the best they've got on Sky F1. She did a tweet. I can't quite find it now. But yeah, she did a tweet about, or someone did a tweet talking about what she had said in terms of what she said in regards to this race being a mandatory two-stop race is that lap 32 is the key lap in this race, because if you pit before, right before lap 32 on, say, lap 31 for your, second pit stop, then you will have to pit again before the end, because if you do 25 laps from lap 31, then you will have to pit with like a lap to go, because if you go over 25 laps, you'll get disqualified. But if you pit one lap after lap 32 on lap 33, then you will be able to go to the end. So that lap 32 is the key lap. That is the part of the race where we'll find out if anyone is going to do one final long stint to the finish, 25 laps on one set of tyres, or if they're going to make a pit stop with, between, say, lap 32 and 57, lap 57 being the final lap of the race. So that's the key lap to remember, is lap 32. So, let's say from Red Bull's perspective, if they can pit on lap 32 or lap 33, then they will be able to just about, as long as the tyres they put on the pit stop are fresh, they will be able just about to go to the very end of the race. But if they can somehow force McLaren into making their second pit stop before lap 32, McLaren will have to pit again before the end for a third pit stop. Hopefully that makes sense to you guys. I think once you see the race unfold, I think it'll start to make sense. So that is the key lap to remember. But let's just go through the strategic options for the teams, because it's a mandatory two-stop race. But again, how you go about that two-stop race is up to you. And of course, you have a 25-lap limit on the tyres. That limit, by the way, is different for certain teams in terms of, if you start the race on tyres that have already done 2 laps, then you've only got 23 laps left on that set of tyres. If if you start the race on a set that's done 5 laps, you've only got 20 laps left on that set of tyres, vice versa. I think it's a simple enough concept to understand. But let's assume that, say, everyone starts the race on tyres that have only done a couple laps, so it ultimately won't make a difference. And then let's also assume that the tyres they put on for the other pit stops will all be fresh. If we start with McLaren, again, the start really is going to dictate what they're going to do in this race. If they get away first and second and start to pull away from Verstappen and Russell behind, which I think they will, not massively, but by a couple tenths of a second per lap, then they've got a very simple race then at that point. Because if they pit on, say, lap 20, then they should be, probably 5-6 seconds clear of Max Verstappen, which, if they are, means that Verstappen will be outside of the undercut range, and they, will be fine to possibly cover off Verstappen, which is waiting for Verstappen to pit first and then covering off that pit stop. Maybe they'll do that, or they'll just stick to the basic plan. But as long as McLaren get away first and second, no dramas, no issues, and are, first and second going into the second lap, then they're going to have a very simple 1-2 finish and a very simple race where they will, probably do 20 laps for the first stint, then probably another 20 laps for the second stint, and then do a, 16, 17 lap final stint to finish the race. That's what I think is the very standard and simple strategy for the race today. If Lando Norris, though, does end up losing, say, second to Verstappen, then at that point, we could see Norris going for an undercut and maybe pitting on lap, 17, 18, something like that, forcing potentially Verstappen to respond, and then maybe Norris can get past that way. And that really is their only option to get past Verstappen if Norris is behind, because remember, McLaren normally tend to run longer than other teams to get, to eventually get overtakes done by doing an overcut and then with fresher tyres than their rival, overtaking them that way. But of course, they can't do that today unless Max, starts on the soft tyre and pits after, say, 12, 13 laps. Unless that happens, which could happen, you don't know. Max might start on the soft and be very aggressive for the start. Unless that happens, then McLaren won't be able to go a few laps longer to overcut Verstappen. So the undercut is the only option if, that scenario presents itself. But if they get away first and second, then the pace of the McLaren should do the job for them, and then they'll be able to wrap up an easy 1-2 finish. For Max Verstappen, I think given the situation, he's third on the grid at a track where it's hard to overtake. He's 25 points behind in the championship. I don't think they have any other choice but to start him on the soft compound tyre. Whilst that is a big risk because his tyres could seriously fall off, pretty quickly, around lap 10 or so. Again, what choice does he have? If he wants to win the championship, he has to finish ahead of Lando Norris today. And realistically, the only way that's going to happen is if he overtakes Lando at the start, and the best way to do that is to start him on the soft compound tyre to protect, or not to protect, to attack against Lando Norris, who will be looking to protect at least second going through the first, few corners. So, that's what I would do. Start him on the soft, and then, if he gets up to second or first, great. If not, then they're going to have to pit him pretty early to try and come back at McLaren that way. If he does, though, get up to, say, at least second, then he could still do a 2-stop race. If he pitted on, say, lap... If he pitted on lap 10, he could do a 2-stop race, because if he went onto a set of mediums and did 25 laps, he could go to lap 35, and then if he pits on lap 35, then he guarantees himself to go to the end of the race on the final set of tyres. So doing a 2-stop race won't be an issue for Verstappen if he starts on the soft compound tyre, because I think the earliest lap you can pit and get to the end of the race whilst doing a 2-stop is on pitting on lap 8. I don't think Max, if he starts on the soft tyre, will pit quite that early. I think that's a bit extreme, because I think that will put him massively out of kilter with the others and will create a big problem for Red Bull, later in the race, unless Red Bull decide to do a 3-stop race, which, is possible. It's something they might, if they start on the soft tyre, maybe they'll just go for that to avoid, being so out of sequence with the others. If they stay on a 2-stop, maybe they'll try that. If they were to do a 3-stop race, though, then I think probably the best way to do it is pit on lap 10, then pit again on lap probably 22 or 25 at the most, and then pit again around lap 40 or 45 for the final pit stop. That's, probably what they should do there. But, I mean, if we get to lap 25 and Verstappen has already made 2 pit stops and McLaren have only just made their first one, Max is going to have to be so incredibly quick compared to the McLarens on fresh tyres when, whilst McLaren are out on track and haven't pitted and Max has. Max is going to have to be so incredibly quick to reverse that difference and make it work for him. And again, remember, we're racing at a circuit that, it's hard to overtake. That's the one thing that scuppers pitting an extra time compared to your rivals is tracks where it's hard to overtake. So I think it's most likely he'll do a 2-stop race, but like I said, if he starts on the soft tyre, he needs to go until at least lap 8 to guarantee a 2-stop race, as long as the tyres he goes on to for the rest of the race are fresh tyres. But yeah, what I would do is start him on the soft, and then I would pit him. I would pit him probably on lap 12, 13, something like that. If they can get to lap 15, that would be great, but I don't think it's realistic, given that McLaren will probably be on better tyres and Lando will be, right behind Max, putting him under pressure. So I think, lap 12, say, is when they should make the first pit stop, and then try and do at least 15 laps on that set of tyres, and then make, the next pit stop. Well, actually, no, forget that. They need to obviously make sure they get until lap 32 if they pit on lap 12, which is obviously 20 laps on a set of tyres. So what will probably happen if he starts on the soft is he'll do a short first stint, then he'll do a long middle stint, and then a slightly shorter final stint to finish the race. But again, whether it works or not depends on what his start is like and where he is compared to the McLarens. If he starts on the soft tyre and he's still behind both McLarens at the start, then he's screwed, because the McLarens will pull away even quicker from Max in the first stint. Max will then have to pit earlier, and then once McLaren pit to cover that off, they will have fresher tyres for the rest of the race, and Max will just continuously fall away from the McLarens. So if he does start on the soft tyre, he has to make it work and has to get ahead of at least one of the McLarens. Because if he doesn't, then his race is over, essentially, and the championship at that point is over, unless Lando Norris has some kind of big issue in the race itself. So, that's what Red Bull's options are. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if they start the soft tyre. I would do it, because again, what do they have to lose? Absolutely nothing, really, at this point. No one expects Max to win the championship, so if they can still keep it going to the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, that would be great. For Mercedes, they could be in a handsome position with Russell in 4th. Not necessarily as much with Antonelli in 5th, because Antonelli is a couple tenths off the pace of his teammate. But for Russell in 4th, he could really be in a great position for this race this evening, because if Max gets ahead of one of the McLarens or even both and somehow gets into the lead, he will hold up the two McLarens and he will back them up into the path of George Russell, meaning Russell will keep up with the leading three and will be probably only 3-4 seconds off the lead, and that will put him right in position to possibly do an undercut or just anything funky on strategy to try and get ahead of the McLarens or even Max in the Red Bull and maybe take the win himself. So Russell, obviously Russell himself will want to have a great start, but I think personally he probably hopes that Max has a better start than him and gets ahead of one of the McLarens, because it will bring Russell a lot more into play with McLaren than, if McLaren have a 1-2. McLaren have a 1-2 at the end of the first lap, then by the time we get to the first round of pit stops, Russell is going to be too far away to be able to fight McLaren and really do anything about the McLarens in general. So that's the hope for Mercedes, is Max gets a great start, gets ahead of the McLarens somehow and holds up the McLarens and backs them up into George Russell. And then if that happens, Russell, like I said, comes right into play for this Grand Prix. And finally, Ferrari. I think with Leclerc, they just need to do the basic two-stop. Pit on lap 20, pit again on lap 40, and go to the end of the race. I don't think there's any point trying anything funky or wildly different on strategy, because the car, it's terribly slow. The team's fed up. Just get some points and get out of there. That's basically what Ferrari need to do. For Lewis Hamilton, I would start Hamilton on either the soft tyre or the hard compound tyre to just try something different. I would probably start him on the soft tyre, because I think, and I would actually put Lewis on a 3-stop strategy, because he has nothing to lose, and why not put him on a strategy where he has to, push a lot harder, have a bit more fun than he's been having as of late. And, if the tyre offset in terms of fresh tyres versus used tyres is a lot, and is even potentially bigger than the team's expected, then that could actually allow a 3-stop strategy to work over a 2-stop strategy. So that's what I would do with Hamilton. Start with a soft tyre, go super aggressive, then whack on another set of soft tyres either for the second stint or for the end of the race, to just absolutely go for it. And then, if he somehow drags it into the points, that would be honestly probably his best drive of the season. If he doesn't, then so be it. He's likely not going to score points anyway, because the car is horrendous. So, hopefully Ferrari will try something different. Normally, when they've got cars out of position, they do put their cars on different tyres, but whether they'll put Hamilton on the soft, we'll have to see. If they start with the hard tyre, even though the hard tyre is probably going to be a very good race tyre, if he's stuck in traffic, I don't think Hamilton is really going to make much use of that compound. So, yeah, that's what I would do. Start with a soft, let Lewis go for it and have some fun, because he has been mentally pounded into the ground this weekend by this dog shit car. So he deserves some sort of, positivity or something in this race today. But we've got, just under an hour now to go until the race begins. I will get to your comments in a moment, don't worry. One final thing I just want to go through is something that I talked about yesterday briefly, which is, it's just a quick channel update where I just want to let you guys know what the plan is between now and Christmas for content on the channel. So, of course, this weekend I've done my watch-alongs. This is obviously the race watch-along. tomorrow I will be doing a podcast reviewing the Qatar Grand Prix. Make sure to check that out tomorrow. And then next weekend, my plan for the content surrounding the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix is dependent on what happens today. If Lando Norris wins the championship, then I will only be doing a race watch along for the final race next weekend. But if the championship goes down to the final race, then I will be doing both a qualifying and race watch along next week in Abu Dhabi. So, that's what's going to decide it, is if Norris wins the championship today or not. And then, of course, there will be a podcast the day after the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix reviewing what happened in the race. That'll be obviously the final podcast of 2025. And then, was it the day after the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix is December the 8th. December the 8th is, I think, exactly 2.5 weeks before Christmas. In that 2.5 week period, there will be 4 further recorded videos uploaded to the channel, which will kick off the winter break content that I've got planned for the channel. 2 of those videos are already confirmed as to what they are. One of them is a end of season driver rankings video, and the other one is a video analysing how the championship was won. Obviously, we need to wait for the championship to actually be won first for me to start making that video. The other 2 videos, I can't remember exactly the subject of them, but I've got it written down somewhere, and I've got it all sorted. So yeah, that's the plan between now and Christmas. So, these are the last couple weekends of the season, and then there'll be a few videos for you guys to enjoy between now and Christmas. And then once we come back from the Christmas New Year period, there'll be a load more videos for you guys to enjoy. And then we'll slowly start building into 2026. So that's the content plan between now and Christmas. And yeah, what I'll make sure to do is have a look at the other 2 videos I've got planned to come out between now and Christmas, and I'll let you guys know what those other 2 videos are. And then, then we'll get on to, obviously, the Christmas and New Year break. And remember, the first pre-season test for 2026 is only in 2 months from now in Barcelona. Barcelona. And I will be covering that with a live stream at the end of that test, just to review the news from that particular test or shakedown or whatever they're trying to call it, that will be taking place at the end of Barcelona in a couple months. But let me, for the next, say, 20 minutes, go through your comments in the live chat. Sorry for yawning there. I've been up quite a while. We'll go through your comments for the next 20 minutes. I'll try and read the best comments out that I can and answer, whatever questions I can. And then, in 20 minutes, I will bring Nib onto the stream. We'll get his thoughts ahead of this Grand Prix. But I'm going to just quickly mute my mic, have a drink, clear my throat, and then we'll get on to your questions. Right, so let's have a look to see what you guys are having to say. And good to see a good amount of you here. Will thinks, or I don't, it sounds more like hopium, to be honest. He thinks Max is going to win the race with Piastri second and Norris DNFing. That is what a lot of us probably want, but again, whether it's going to happen or not, you just don't know. Will says Norris won't win it today. The occasion will get to him. I think there is a pretty decent chance he doesn't win it today. Remember, though, if you're a Lando Norris fan, he doesn't need to even finish second in these final two races. He can finish third in the final two races and still be champion. So, he can just comfortably bring it home for a very mediocre, average third place today and the same next weekend and be fine. At the end of the day, it's all about being champion at the very end of the season when, all is said and done. It doesn't matter how you win it as long as you make sure that, you have won it. Darth Lorem says Albon is the new Lance Trolley Bolly. I wouldn't go that low with Albon. He's not performing well, but he is nowhere near as bad as Lance Stroll. Lance Stroll is another level of shit. He really, really is. So let's not be too unfair to Albon, who at least still had a very, very good season despite how it's dropped off towards the end. Astro in the chat, good to see you, says, yet Tsunoda was so good in the Racing Bull / AlphaTauri, but so rubbish at Red Bull. Ditto Lawson in the Red Bull in the first two races. Curse seat, curse. Keep striking. Poor Yuki. At certain other Grand Prix, I probably would agree with you, but this weekend I can't, because he literally showed us that he can do it. He can perform, but then resorts back to type. That's the worst part of it. If you're going to be slow during a weekend, at least be slow the whole time. Don't be one of those who's like, shows clearly that you can perform to the level expected and then just be slow anyway. I think that's what really pisses certain teams off. I mean, at least with Liam Lawson, Liam was never quick at all. He never showcased any pace. So, yeah. Will says Bortoletto has a 5-place penalty for causing the Turn 1 crash at Las Vegas. Does he? He does. So I've got that wrong. I completely forgot that he got a grid penalty. Even though he does clearly deserve a grid penalty. What he did at the start in Las Vegas was absolutely terrible. Dive bombing into the middle of the pack and taking out, he took out basically, was it 2 cars with his dive bomb? It was absolutely horrendous mistake from Bortoletto. But yeah, I forgot. I thought he was 14th on the grid, but he's not. He's 19th. So I think Hamilton's a good chance to win today. This might be chaotic at the start. Yanni says Ferrari and Hamilton need to retire. Will says, what, Ferrari get disqualified for plank wear? That would be genuinely hilarious if they did that. That would be genuinely like top level comedy for F1 if they actually got disqualified, whilst whilst cheating, which is actually, they've done that before. I can't remember where, but I remember, I don't know if it was earlier this season or it was like a couple years ago, where they got disqualified for for being over the limit of something, and they ended up being absolutely terrible even though they cheated. I can't remember exactly what race. It might have been the Chinese Grand Prix earlier this year. I think I even said on the podcast that, if you're gonna cheat, at least win the race rather than finish. What was it? It's like fifth. I think they finished in that race. Let me scroll down. Astro saying Max has to go for it, just hope he doesn't take out Oscar. Well, if you look at the start here, so Oscar on the grid will be starting on the left hand side, which is the racing line. Lando has the inside line for turn one, but the thing is the inside line is not necessarily the best line to have for the first corner. It depends how good you are under braking, really, as to whether you can make that inside line work. Because even if Lando puts his car up the inside, if Piastri or Verstappen has enough momentum, they can just carry it around the outside and keep the position. For Max Verstappen, if he gets a good initial launch, the advantage he has is that he can grab a slipstream from the McLarens ahead and then take the racing line, which is the fastest line through the corner, and possibly get around the two McLarens that way. But it all depends on that initial couple seconds after the start. That initial getaway, that's really what decides whether you're going to have a good start or not. And for Max, if he gets a really good initial getaway, then I think he's almost certain going to get at least one of the McLarens into the first corner. Laurie Rastogi saying Fornaroli deserves a chance in F1 next year. I don't know if it's been officially confirmed because there are still some investigations going on for the F2 feature race that happened earlier, but it appears that we have crowned a new Formula 2 champion, and if it is indeed eventually correct once the stewards have finished their investigation, congratulations to Leonardo Fornaroli for winning the Formula 2 championship. Let me just have a look at the F2 standings. The nearest challenger for him has been Richard Verschoor, who has been in F2, it feels like, for 10 years. And yeah, Fornaroli has had, 4 wins this season? He's only won one feature race this season, which was in Hungary. But yeah, congratulations to him, finishing ahead of Jack Crawford, Richard Verschoor, Luke Browning, Alex Dunn, Arvid Lindblad. Lindblad's pretty much confirmed will be on the grid next season. But yeah, Fornaroli, I don't think is part of any driver academy. He is, I've just looked, he's the test driver for the Jaguar Formula E team. So maybe that's where he'll go next season. Not sure. But yeah, congratulations to him. Only 20 years old. And he's one of the very few drivers also in history to win not only the Formula 2 championship, but also Formula 3. He won Formula 3 last season. So clearly, he is a very talented driver. Whether he'll be on the grid in Formula 1 in the future, we'll see. It's very unlikely, though, because he's not associated with any driver academy. And yeah, the only manufacturer in motorsport he's associated with is Jaguar. He's their reserve and test driver in Formula E. So maybe that's where he'll end up eventually. But yeah, Formula 3 champion last year and now Formula 2 champion on his debut season. So I've always said that, if you win the F2 championship, I think you, without a doubt, deserve a chance in Formula One. That isn't to say that those drivers will be good enough, but they absolutely deserve an opportunity, because if you win Formula 2, Formula 2 is not easy to win. There are some F1 quality drivers in there every year. You deserve your opportunity to prove yourself. So if he gets the chance, he absolutely deserves it. And whether he proves himself to be good enough or not is another story. Astro's saying, BBC News saying, Pinto Sly will be starting from the pit lane. Well, he's starting last anyway, so it doesn't matter. Let me find some other comments here if I can. NYC says, thank you for your channel, Nate from South Africa. No problem. Hope you are well. Says, I have no predictions, but I'm genuinely looking forward to the finale. As fans of the sport, we couldn't really have asked for much better. Well, it depends on who you support. If you're a McLaren fan, this has been an amazing season. But I had really high hopes for this season, and I think we all did. Because last season, the end of last season was so exciting. We had, all 4 front-running teams all fighting for race wins, trading wins. We had, I think 7 different winners last season? Which is the most different winners we've had in a Formula 1 season since, 2012, I think. So, yeah, it was a very exciting, end to that season. And because the regulations this season were stable, I was really hopeful that we could just continue that on, essentially, into 2025. I think what's ruined this season from being really a lot better is Ferrari. Everyone expected Ferrari to be right there fighting for wins in the championship, but they simply didn't show up. Even McLaren and Red Bull, they all expected Ferrari to be there, and they weren't. So, yeah, that is, if Ferrari this season, and you can go back through the qualifying sessions and the races and make the adjustments if you want, if Ferrari this season were half a second a lap quicker in every session than they have been, this season would have been a really amazing season. It would have been. We would have had Ferrari winning races, Mercedes, obviously Max winning a few, McLaren. It would have been a really, it would have been a season pretty much that continued where last season left off. But Ferrari didn't show up, and that really hurt, I think, the possibility of 2025 delivering an all-timer type of season. But it's still been a good season in terms of the championship, competitiveness. We've still had some good races. It's not been, we've had some boring races, but it's not been too repetitive. Even though, McLaren. Sorry for the yawn there. What do you call it? McLaren, even though they've won quite a lot of races, it hasn't felt too repetitive like it did, with Red Bull back in 2023 or 2022. So it's not been a bad season, but it could have been quite a bit better, no doubt about it. But I think this season not quite living up to the hype that we all had for it. The only thing it's done is made me look forward to a complete reset of the regulations, because these ground effect cars have failed. They have not worked. They haven't produced the racing we wanted, and they're just less enjoyable to drive. They're bigger, heavier. Thankfully, next year's cars are lighter, but still not light enough, but at least they're moving in the right direction. And hopefully, because next year's cars are Venturi type cars rather than ground effect cars, hopefully we'll get back more to the type of racing we had in 2020 or 2021, which was a lot more exciting than what we've had, in the last 3 to 4 years. Nib saying awful season so far. Laurie saying Colapinto does need to get closer to Gasly when the car is good. Gasly strikes while the iron is hot and Colapinto doesn't. Yeah. There has been some races this weekend, not this weekend, this season, where Colapinto has been better than Gasly. The problem is they've been on weekends where Alpine have been the slowest team and have been absolutely nowhere. So when, that happens, he's not going to get any recognition for that because, even if he's beaten Gasly, he still finishes, 17th, 18th, whatever it may be. But like you say, when the car improves, he needs to be not necessarily right there with Gasly. Colapinto is not as good as Pierre Gasly. I don't think he ever will be. But he shouldn't be half a second off. Gasly is a very fast driver in qualifying, but he's not that quick. He's not Max Verstappen or Ayrton Senna levels or Lewis Hamilton levels of speed. But I think I'll read out probably one final comment, and then we will get into bringing Nib on, and also, what do you call it? I am going to post the stream link out one final time before we get underway. So, yeah, let me just find one final comment if I can. Astro saying, love seeing Oscars wins this year. Yeah, I am biased. Yeah, for you guys, it's been the best season for an Australian in quite a while, and obviously the most fuss kicked up by an Australian for quite a few years. I think Piastri is going to lose the championship very likely, but we still need to remember, even though when it mattered most, he threw it away. He still has performed well this season. We still had some really great race wins, especially at Spa, Bahrain, Miami, Barcelona. He's had some really great moments this season, which I hope don't get completely just forgotten because he didn't deliver when it mattered most at the end of the season. So, yeah, Piastri, he's had a good season, no doubt about it. But in terms of how we view him exactly compared to his teammate and Verstappen and Russell and Leclerc and all them, that's a different debate. But he's had a good season. This has been, without a doubt, his best season so far in Formula One. And at this point, I think you'd probably say Oscar Piastri is one of the top 5 best drivers top 5, maybe top 6 at the worst, best drivers in Formula One. So, yeah, we need to remember that. Anyway, let me just post the stream link out one final time, and then we will bring Nib on. Nib has not been on for quite a while. Last time was the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. That was almost 10 weeks ago. Right. So, yeah, let me just quickly post this stream link out one final time. come join us here to watch along a potentially title. Right, there you go. And the link has been posted out, so hopefully we'll get a few more people joining. Quickly, what do you call it? Before I bring Nib on, as usual, make sure to subscribe for more content like this. Bottom right of the screen, you can subscribe there, or just click my channel name and go to my channel page and click subscribe. Also, for everyone watching, if you haven't hit the like button yet, make sure to do so. We're on 25 likes. Let's try and get up to 35 or 40 plus likes if we can in the next half an hour. It'd be great if we could do that. And also, there is a poll running at the top of the chat where I've asked you guys who will win the Qatar Grand Prix today. That poll will keep running for another probably 20 minutes. So if you haven't decided yet, you've got 20 more minutes to decide who you think is going to be the champion. But, right, let me just get onto Discord and hopefully it'll all connect up and work. I probably won't be able to hear him initially first. Right, can you hear me? Right, hold on a sec. Let's just make sure the stream can hear you. There you go. How are you?
Hello.
Yeah, you're coming all
good.
Clear.
We're good so far.
Yeah. Yeah, as I said, it's been a long time since you've been on stream. 9-10 weeks ago, something like that, was the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. And of course, so much in Formula One has happened since then. So we'll start, by looking at obviously Oscar Piastri. What are your general thoughts of what has happened since Baku? We from you, I think you certainly hoped that Baku weekend would be quickly forgotten about from his perspective and he would just get back on it, but it clearly turned the tide, didn't it, against him?
Yeah, a combination of things. I mean, he said he was a bit rattled after Monza, but Baku's quite comfortably one of his better tracks, and for him to put in a weekend like that was simply unacceptable. And then those next 4 races after that are difficult tracks for Oscar. Those are ones that he's got to improve at. Different style of driving. Andrea Stella has actually talked about it this weekend, where you got to drive a different way around Qatar, around Mexico, and Oscar struggles with that, and he has throughout his F1 career. So that's something that he certainly needs to improve. But I think the combination of the loss of confidence after Baku and then going to some of his weaker tracks compounded everything.
Yeah, Piastri, like you said, once he made that mistake in Baku, it was awful timing because, yeah, those tracks, was it Singapore, Austin, Mexico, Brazil, just, yeah, not circuits that so far he's been able to consistently deliver. And obviously Lando Norris is now the leader and obviously is so close to winning the championship. In terms of Lando turning up his form, do you think do you think it's because he has actually now finally started to deliver when the pressure, gets high, or do you think that, there's been a change in the car that which is why he's improved? Because say for the first 50, 60, even 70% of the season, Lando was still a bit inconsistent. But if you look since Singapore, he's been, hasn't he, pretty consistently on it and pretty much the number one McLaren.
Yeah, and he's still been making some mistakes, but they haven't been costly. Like they haven't been the final lap in Q3. I mean, I did that yesterday, but it hasn't. Those sort of mistakes he was making earlier in the season haven't been as common, and there's no doubt that he's lifted his game. At the same time that the world championship leader at the time dropped his game, and he's taken advantage. And well, you got to say, well, I can't bring myself to say that, but he's the world championship leader.
Yeah, I know this is going to be very hard viewing potentially for you. But I will give him credit. He has done something in these last few races that I didn't think was really possible with him, because I mean we saw it last season where at this time of the season he was just falling apart completely. And even earlier this season, when the pressure was on, he was, crashing and qualifying and ending up sixth and seventh and, places like that. So, credit where credit's due. He has stepped up when he's had to. That is, if you're going to win championships and you're going to be one of the better drivers, that's something you have to do, is step up to be counted when it matters most. And Lando, credit to him, he has been doing that since the Singapore race. Obviously, he's won a couple races, crucially, Mexico and Brazil, which has really helped his case as well. But of course, in the last couple months, Max Verstappen has raced himself into a potentially championship position. Obviously, this weekend has not been the best for Max, losing a point to Lando in the sprint. But at this point, with how great he's been, not just this season, but especially the last couple months, how are we? Obviously, me and you agree he's the best on the grid, but how far ahead at this point do you think he is of the rest? Because he has been just unbelievable in 2025, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's absolutely miles ahead. It's quite hilarious. Martin Brundle thinks that it's quite small. I don't know what sport you're watching. If you think that, I mean, Verstappen is miles ahead, the best driver, and he said it himself. If he was driving that McLaren, things would be very different. The championship would have been over. I mean, probably 4 or 5 races ago.
Yeah, maybe even more. He could potentially won it by the very end of the European part of the season. Not maybe officially, but he could have been easily 70, 80 points clear. He is just amazing. Um, did Brundle, did he say who he thinks Max is close with, or did he just say it's close?
I don't know. I've only heard his take paraphrased by Crofty during some of the practice sessions, but I'd assume he's going to say that Norris and Leclerc are near there. But Lee Clark does love to make some absolute howlers, so
Yeah. I mean, if we're talking purely pace, then yeah, I'd say Max is probably only just about better than Leclerc and Russell. But that's not all of what makes a Formula One driver great. You've got, the wheel to wheel battling, driving in the wet or difficult conditions, consistency, all those different things. And that's why Max is clearly the best, because he is pretty much a 10 out of 10 in all of those areas. When, if you look at Leclerc, over a qualifying lap, Leclerc might be the fastest driver on the grid, but he doesn't consistently deliver it, and it's not just as consistently great as Verstappen in those areas. And if you look at George Russell, same thing. You could argue he is the absolute fastest driver in Formula One when he's at his best. But whilst he is very, very quick, Russell, in terms of wheel-to-wheel battles, I think Russell is nowhere near as good as Max Verstappen. And that is still an area of Russell's which he needs to work on a lot, especially if he's going to be battling for a championship next year. But yeah, I mean, it's something people debate, but for me, especially after not just this year, but last year, he is by far the best driver on the grid. There's just no doubt in my mind about that. And if he was in that McLaren this season, he would have had a 2023 style season, no doubt about it. And Verstappen
Yeah.
coming into this race, 25 points behind, has to beat Lando Norris, remember, to have a chance going into Abu Dhabi as what do you call it? Martin Brundle just interviewing some of the celebrities on the grid, and there's plenty of them. So yeah, looking into this Grand Prix, we've got obviously your man on pole, brilliant lap yesterday from Piastri, Norris second, Verstappen third. Thankfully, all the championship contenders in the top three. The start is so important. I've already talked about how important it is earlier in this stream. What do you think happens at the start? Do you think Max will absolutely send it? Or do you think McLaren will somehow fend him off?
Is there what I think will happen and what I hope happens? No, I mean Piastri. I think literally apart from Imola, has had very good race starts from pole. Because of course, you can't say race starts full stop because of after what happened at Baku. Um, but off pole, he seems to always get a pretty good start. I hope I've not jinxed it, so I'd expect Piastri to keep it ahead into turn one. Behind, who knows? Because Norris didn't get a great start yesterday and could have easily been overtaken by Sonoda, but didn't quite get past in the end, and then let Max through quite nicely about turn 5, I think it was. So yeah, I think Piastri holds the lead, but who knows what happens behind? It's chaos could ensure, and I wouldn't mind that whatsoever.
As well with Max, what do you think the chances are that Red Bull will start him, even though this tyre is not at all the best race tyre? What do you think the chances are they'll start him on the soft? Because as we saw in the sprint, overtaking is very, very difficult. So the start is basically 90% of this race. Do you think they'll take that risk and start him on the soft and just hope that he'll utilize that to get up a position or two?
Maybe that could be a decent strategy where you use the just get that soft tire out the way and then pit once you can do your 25 laps each on the medium, and then race in clean air for for 25 laps basically on the medium. So it could be a good strategy for sure, and I'm sure it's something that they might have considered. It's something that I'd probably do in a video game, but let's see whether or not they do that if they take that big of a risk here.
Yeah, they did. They have done it a couple times this year. They did it in Singapore, where Max was on the front row there with Russell. But of course, the run down to turn one in Singapore not as long, and Max actually didn't get that good of a start in Singapore, so wasn't able to utilize it. But Red Bull, they've done it before a few times, so I think there is a strong enough possibility that they will go for that, because even Max said after qualifying that he's got nothing to lose for this Grand Prix, as they're now playing the Qatari national anthem. So ultimately, what do you think happens? What's your top three for the race today?
Piastri, Verstappen, Alonso.
God, that's ambitious. But I mean, we've had a surprise podium here before, which was Alonso back in 2021, I think it was. So it's not impossible. And one thing
Hey, this is a new me with the predictions, because I always go boring. So not so boring today.
Yeah. I was gonna say, what do you call it? Remember last year, of course, we did have a pretty processional, boring race, and then suddenly it came alive and we had, loads of cars all out of order and all over the place in the final 20 laps of that race because we had debris on track. So all it takes is something like that, and this race can completely change around. And, a late safety car with, 15 laps to go, especially if teams have already made what they consider to be their final pit stop, if other teams can get in and get another set of tyres on, you just never know what could happen in this race. We've had tyre failures here before. That's one thing, obviously, to watch out for tonight. And another thing to watch out for and keep an eye on, Pirelli have talked about it this weekend, is they've had a lot of cuts on the tyres from the gravel. The gravel, I don't know why, but the gravel here at this circuit is very sharp compared to the gravel at other tracks. So it's not impossible we could see some tyre issues and possibly tyre failures, from running into the gravel, which, I mean, we've seen so many times, the teams running wide into the gravel at, I think, turn 5 and turn 6 and corners like that. So, even though we had a processional race yesterday in the sprint, the point I'm trying to make is we could still get something very surprising today. We've had, crazy starts here before, obviously, the two Mercedes colliding a couple years ago. So, yeah, you just never know what could happen, as we have got 13 minutes to go until the race begins. So get your predictions, guys, in the chat, and we'll see what you guys have to say in terms of who you think is going to win this Grand Prix, finishing second, third, and all of that. One final thing I want to ask, Nib, is how, if Leclerc wasn't in that Ferrari, do you think that Ferrari is genuinely the worst car on the grid right now?
Oh, not the worst, but it's up there. I mean, to be fair, I think what Leclerc's done has been pretty special. But then Mr. Hamilton, on the other hand, not so good.
Yeah, 18th in 2 consecutive qualifying sessions. And I think you sent it to me, didn't you? The on board of Leclerc on the first lap of the sprint. My God, you would think he was driving in the wet at times with the grip levels he had on that first lap. It was mental. I feel so sorry for him. No wonder he's looking to leave Ferrari for 2027 with how bad things have become, because he at this point, he's just been such a punished driver in that team. As well, did you see those comments from John Elkann a couple of weeks ago where
Oh
he
yeah,
told the drivers to basically just shut up and drive? What did you make of that?
yeah. What a tart! Bro just said, "Shut up and dribble." Like, come on, mate.
Yeah.
Really?
And so as
Yeah.
well, some of the other stuff he said about, like, the team, I think he was saying, "Oh, the engineers have been great this season." Like, what on earth are you looking at? Like, who is advising or telling this guy that everything is going well on the engineering front? My God. But yeah, Ferrari are going to fail to win a race this season. That's first be the first time they've failed to win a race since 2021. And it's now 13 months without a win. And by the time we get to Melbourne in March, it'll be, 18 months? So, yeah, could be quite a while until Ferrari win their next race. Could even be until 2027, because next year's not looking very good. Let me see if I can find a couple predictions quick. Mira says Oscar P1 both today in Abu Dhabi. Lando P3 and P4 finishes. That'll make Oscar champion. I'm Delulu.
I'm right there with you, mate. Don't worry.
Astra saying Max takes out both McLarens at the start. The title fight goes to next weekend. Yeah, well, yeah, as long as Max. Well, yeah, it does. Because even if Max doesn't finish the race as well, Max, I think, would still be officially just inside the gap to still be in the championship fight. So, yeah, if the top three all crash into each other and take each other off at the first corner, then the championship will go down to the final race, and they'll all three of those drivers will be in contention in Abu Dhabi. But that is surely the most unlikely of options. Let me see if we can find any other comments quick. Brother Mars, good to see you, saying Stroll is the best on the grid, indeed. Albert, Laurie was saying Albon, he's below Norris due to the fact that I believe if Albon was fighting for the championship, his second half of the season would be costly. True, but I think one thing we have to remember is, obviously, if Albon was fighting for the championship, his mentality and approach would be different. So I think one thing that may not have helped Albon is, Williams pretty much secured fifth in the championship a few races ago. So the need for him to score points as regularly as he wasn't as much anymore because the job was pretty much done at that point. But it is still remarkable how Carlos Sainz is now dominating, really, Alex Albon race by race. And it's ever since that race in Baku, ever since that podium, Albon has been miles away from Sainz, and it's been pretty much how we expected that partnership to go from the start of the season. Anyway, let me finish up the poll in the chat, as we've had just under 500 votes. And the poll will appear in the chat in a moment. One other thing I want to quickly add is, and I've been notified about this, and I've seen it myself. For you guys viewing the stream, there might be a hype button below the stream. There's loads of other buttons. I can't remember exactly what they say. But if there is a hype button just below the screen where obviously my stream is playing, make sure to click that. And what that basically does is it shares out basically the link of this stream and essentially spreads the stream around. And the more hypes it gets, it essentially gets more traction, this stream. So if you can see that button, then make sure to click the hype button. And then, if we can get a few people clicking it, then it would help obviously get more viewers onto the stream. 541 votes. And I asked you guys who will win the Qatar Grand Prix. 63% of you have gone for Max Verstappen, 18% for Piastri, 16% for Norris, and just 3% for George Russell. We will see whether Max Verstappen can indeed win this Grand Prix. Remember, Verstappen...
I've got to say, Chaz.
Go on.
It is about 80% of the subscriber base from the Netherlands, because the fact that Verstappen is favourite to win, and even an higher percentage than he was to take pole, is absolutely laughable.
Actually, you say that, it is. If you look at my analytics after UK and US, I think it's like third. So, yeah, quite a lot of the viewers are from the Netherlands, and I'm sure they have inhaled a lot of copium coming into this stream. But, reminder with Verstappen for all of you Dutch fans, he has to beat Lando Norris today to have a chance of winning the championship in Abu Dhabi. That is as simple as that. If Lando finishes ahead of him, he's out of the championship. So that is what Verstappen needs to do today. Anyway, let's go on to a final couple bits of information before lights out. Firstly, a quick look at the championship standings. Lando Norris comes into this race 22 points clear of Oscar Piastri. Lando just needs to outscore Piastri by 3 or I think 4 points coming into this Grand Prix. Remember, of course, if Norris wins this race, he is champion regardless of what Piastri and Verstappen do. Verstappen in third, 25 points behind. Then Russell fourth, Leclerc fifth, Hamilton sixth, Antonelli seventh, Albon eighth, Hadjar ninth, and Nico Hülkenberg in 10th. And on the constructors' side, McLaren the champions. Mercedes second. Mercedes will probably officially clinch second today. Red Bull in third. Ferrari fourth. Williams fifth. Racing Bull sixth. Aston Martin, after the sprint, are now 1 point clear of Haas in seventh. Sauber in ninth. And Alpine last. Let's go on to some key stats, though, for the front-running teams. McLaren, remember, have never won the Qatar Grand Prix, but they have won 3 of the last 8 races in 2025. Those races being Zandvoort, Mexico, and Brazil. And McLaren last year finished 3rd and 10th. Of course, Lando Norris was robbed of 2nd with an unfair penalty. Can they go one better, though, and get the win today? The Red Bull, their last win in Qatar, of course, was last year. They've won the last 2 races here in Qatar and have won 4 of the last 8 races in 2025. Can Max get a 3rd win in a row, which will keep his championship very much alive going into Abu Dhabi? Ferrari also have never won the Qatar Grand Prix. Yeah, their last win, October 2024. They actually finished on the podium here in 2nd in last year's race. They would be crying tears of joy if they got that today. And for Mercedes, their last win in Qatar was 4 years ago with Lewis Hamilton. And their last race win in Formula 1, 5 races ago in Singapore. Last year, they just missed out on the podium. Can they go one better and get onto the podium today? They haven't had a podium here since that win in 2021. But let's get on to now your starting grid for the Qatar Grand Prix. So on the front row, it is a McLaren front row. Oscar Piastri on pole. Lando Norris in 2nd. That is, by the way, Piastri's first pole position since the Dutch Grand Prix. On the 2nd row, Max Verstappen and George Russell. 3rd row, the 2 rookies, Kimi Antonelli and Isaac Hadjar. All Spanish 4th row, Carlos Sainz and Fernando Alonso. And completing the top 10, Pierre Gasly and Charles Leclerc. Just outside of the top 10, Nico Hülkenberg and Liam Lawson. And then I forgot to add or apply Gabriel Bortoletto's 5-place penalty. So it is instead Behrman in 13th with Albon in 14th. And then Tsunoda 15th with Ocon in 16th. Lewis Hamilton then will be 17th with Lance Stroll in 18th. Then Gabriel Bortoletto will be 19th with Franco Colapinto last of all. So there you go. And the formation lap will be underway in a moment. And we'll see who's on what tyre compound. By the way, Rooks, good to see you. Hopefully you're doing well. And yeah, we'll have a look to see who's on what tyre compound. Most people should be on the mediums, as McLaren just removing the tyre blankets. As the formation lap about to begin. Tyre blankets still just about on the cars. As now they're lifted off, and yeah, looks like pretty much everyone in the top 10 are on mediums. And yeah, Rook's saying everyone on mediums except Hülkenberg and Hamilton on the softs. And Albon and Colapinto on hards. So let me just update that. The formation lap begins right now. So cars all pulling away. And yeah, everyone on the mediums, as Rook said, except for Hulkenberg and Hamilton on the soft, and Albon and Colapinto, who are on the hard compound tyre. As already, the McLarens have completed the first sector on this formation lap. So, yeah, all of the top 10 on medium. So we'll watch out to see what Hulkenberg and Hamilton can do on the softs. Remember, this is a mandatory 2-stop race. Allocated tyres for this race can cover a max of 25 laps per set, counted across all track sessions. So you're only allowed 25 laps on a set of tyres, meaning that, for example, if you've already done a couple laps on, say, a set of tyres, which I imagine most drivers starting the race have, then they'll have probably, 23 laps left. As Oscar Piastri is coming into the final corner now. And Lando just completing the final corner as well. As they get the tyres warmed up, doing their final burnouts. And the front half of the top 10 onto now the pit straight. Pole position here. In the 3 races we've had here, pole position has got away comfortably into the lead in turn 1. The only time it hasn't was last year, of course, where Max on the front row pretty much instantly got ahead of Russell, who was on pole. And if Lando is to get into the lead, then that's what you're going to need, is just that initial getaway to get him instantly up into the lead. As the top 10 now line up on the grid, Franco Colapinto now enters the pit lane. He's starting from the pit lane, so only 19 cars on the grid. As the last few cars do their burnouts and line up for this race in the Qatari desert. The championship can be decided today, but will Lando Norris officially become world champion? That's what we're going to find out in the next 57 laps. As the lights come on, it's 2, 3, 4, 5 lights. And lights out very quickly, and away we go. Oscar Piastri gets a great start. Verstappen does as well. And he's going round the outside of Lando Norris into turn 1. And Verstappen up to second. Norris not having a great start there. And the 2 Mercedes have got away. All good. 4th and 5th. As Norris now having a look at Verstappen. It's actually one of the Mercedes is dropped behind Carlos Sainz. And is now battling with Alonso. That will be... it's actually Russell. Antonelli is up to 4th. And Russell... side by side with Hadjar, Russell is down to 7th place. As cars side by side all over the place through the middle sector. As that's Hadjar and Gasly going side by side, we just saw briefly, but they've Hadjar has kept the place. Leclerc still in P10. Lewis Hamilton has got up to 14th. Behrman up to 12th. So yeah, Hamilton up to 14th. Ocon up to 15th. Albon has had a poor start. He's now 17th. And there you go. They've all got away. All good. As Piastri through the final corner begins. Lap 2 of 57. And needs to get his foot down and get away from Verstappen, who's already pulled a decent gap to Norris. But Nib, what a start, not only for Piastri, but Verstappen instantly taking advantage of Lando's sluggish getaway.
Yep, superb start by Oscar. Was quite frankly a replay of yesterday, and Max was just able to get ahead of Norris. Norris come back at him later in the lap, and now Norris is getting closed in ever so slightly by Russell.
Yeah, as interestingly, Nico Hulkenberg has just overtaken Leclerc for 10th. So Leclerc now behind the soft tyre runner Hulkenberg. That soft tyre for Hulkenberg will be good for these first 2, 3, maybe 4 laps. But once we get into lap 5, 6, 7, they should start to drop off. As Hulkenberg is right behind Pierre Gasly. As Oscar Piastri out front is already 1.6 seconds clear of Max Verstappen, doing exactly what he needs to pull the gap. Lando Norris is about a second and a half behind Verstappen, 3 seconds already, or just under 3 seconds off the lead of his teammate. So Lando, yeah, sluggish, I think is the best way to describe it. Start to this race. And he's got Antonelli just about within a second of him as we begin lap 3, as Hulkenberg a bit further down the order, trying to get after Gasly in 9th. And has the DRS. Obviously, DRS now enabled, and Hulkenberg unable to get past. As Gasly, I think, has got damage. He's running along the ground a lot. So I think he may have hit someone, because that looks like a broken floor or something. And yeah, he's dropped over a second behind Hadjar. So I think Gasly's race, sadly, might already be run. So Piastri out front, continuing to pull away. Lando Norris almost 4 seconds off the lead McLaren. Let me just update that your Albon in 17th on the hard, and Hamilton up to 14th on the soft. Hamilton's had a decent start. So into the final corner, Piastri continuing to pull away as he got the gap up to a couple seconds. Not quite sure. Yep, he just about has as he begins lap 4. As Norris still hasn't dropped Antonelli. Antonelli has got DRS again. So Antonelli is just about keeping himself up with this front 3 pair. As Gasly noted for rejoining unsafely, so maybe that's where the floor damage has come from. As they all
possibly
settle down. And hopefully we'll see a replay of what happened with Gasly and what happened at the start. And here is a replay of the start. Nib, I'll let you take us through it once they get to it.
I don't know if I will get the race replay start, because I'm on F1 TV. Oh, here we go. Here's the start. But yes, perfect start by Piastri, and yeah, Norris just got. I mean, Norris didn't even have that bad of a start, but just Verstappen had an even better one, and quite smoothly got past Norris. Then can't really see too much further behind of what has occurred. As now we're getting another back view shot of Piastri start, and Piastri made sure to give the toe to Verstappen, which was certainly the right thing to do. As Piastri's gap is still growing on this lap, as now we're getting a shot of Hamilton. What's going on here? The contact between a Haas and a Racing Bull, as Hamilton is able to get through. Hopefully we can see a replay of Gasly. Oh, and then Hamilton's forced off the track. I'm going to assume that's by Lawson. Yep, definitely was Lawson. And then is this Hulkenberg overtaking Leclerc? Yeah, absolutely perfect. And Leclerc's then just driven himself off the track, as now we've finally got a replay of Gasly, and I assume he just runs wide at turn 14, and yeah, that's where the damage has come from. And as we've seen all weekend, that the pieces of gravel are quite large.
Yeah, that's where I'm not sure the exact corner, but that's pretty much how Max Verstappen damaged his floor in the end of sprint qualifying by doing something similar. But Gasly is still hanging on in ninth, so it's not costing him too much. But yeah, it's going to be a difficult race from here. As Max saying, I have quite extreme balance shifts right to left-hand corners. He's just giving some feedback to his team. As Lando Norris has now dropped Antonelli. So now Antonelli will be left in the dust. Piastri, about 2 seconds still clear of Verstappen. Norris in third, 4 seconds off the lead. One thing I am surprised about is that Russell has not already passed Alonso. He's right up behind Alonso, but he's not looked at all likely to overtake. So, yeah, not. I'm not sure about this onboard camera of the Sauber. Looks very weird and broken. Maybe a bit of gravel's hit it or something, but yeah. Russell has not looked likely at all to overtake Alonso, so he's just stuck in that bit of traffic behind Alonso, and then Alonso is only a second or so behind Carlos Sainz, doing a great job in P5 as the field has all settled down. No position changes in the last 3-4 laps. And in terms of pit stops, the soonest people to pit, you'd imagine, will be Hülkenberg and Hamilton, who are on the soft tyres. But I'd imagine it'll probably be another 5 laps or so yet before they come in. As on lap 7, Piastri, 2.5 seconds clear of Max Verstappen. Norris in third, continuing to lose time to Piastri, but I think he is slowly starting to gain on Verstappen by a couple tenths or so. So this is the difficult part of the race where Max is going to fall back into the clutches of Norris as Hülkenberg has I was going to say he's overtaking Gasly, but he's not, and that is a very dramatic incident. His tyre is completely fallen off, and he's gone through a polystyrene board. I don't know if he's been hit on the tyre or what, but Gasly he's definitely got floor damage now. Safety car. And yeah, Gasly is out of. Well, I'm not sure if he's out of this race. It might just be a puncture, but that floor looks like it is absolutely destroyed now. So we'll see what happened.
Jesus.
Hülkenberg. Let's just hold on. Yeah, he might be able to continue. I'm not sure. The sparks might just be because of the puncture, but I was going to say that Hülkenberg did briefly overtake Gasly, so I think it might have been Gasly touching the rear end of Hülkenberg whilst Hülkenberg was going past or something. So on lap 8, Max Verstappen pits. And so does Antonelli and Sainz and Alonso, and McLaren have stayed out. I feel like this is a massive mistake by McLaren. But we don't know yet for sure, as the Mercedes there held in the pits for a while, as Esteban Ocon has stayed out. So I think pretty much every car there is pitted, except for the 2 McLarens and Esteban Ocon.
Yep.
And McLaren, they're not going to be able to come in and pit at the end of this lap because they've already caught the safety car. So what are McLaren doing?
Well, they've done this a couple of times, haven't they?
Yeah, they're not great around safety car periods, McLaren. as Max
Why is
Verstappen.
Hulkenberg aura farming there, standing on their barrier?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what he's up to there, but well, I'll try and find out who exactly is on what tyres in a moment. I'm assuming everyone just pitted for a set of mediums, but the front three are definitely on mediums because they all haven't pitted yet. Here we go. Hulkenberg around the outside of turn one. Looked like a racing incident to me.
Racing incidents don't exist anymore. Come on.
Yeah, that's I don't see. Hulkenberg might feel aggrieved, but I don't see how they can punish Gasly there. Gasly's steering right as much as he can. Contact was made.
Yeah.
Contact was inevitable, I'm afraid.
And, well, have you got the tyres left for the teams today?
No, I wasn't able to find that information, unfortunately.
Okay, because Verstappen just has to pit one more time.
Yeah, he can just about get to the end. Yeah, as Ocon has been given a 5-second time penalty.
That was for moving before the start.
Right, I was gonna say I never even saw it noted for investigation, but
Ah,
there you go.
well, Will Joseph, who I've got to say is quite the hilarious race engineer. Um, Norris asked why they didn't pit, and Will Joseph said they have lost all their flexibility for the remainder of the race. Yeah, well, that's no help.
I mean, what he said is true, but like you said, Max only has to pit once more. The two McLarens have to pit twice more, so Max has gained a pit stop on the two McLarens, and a pit stop around here is what, 20 seconds? 22 seconds?
And and realistically, because it is so difficult to overtake here, a pit stop is worth a lot more time than that.
And remember, Max is now on 8-lap fresher tyres when we get going again, so he'll be quicker than the two McLarens. So if Max is able to pass the two McLarens, which I'd be surprised if he is, but if he can on 8-lap fresher tyres before McLaren pit, then Max is, if we don't get any more safety cars, Max has won the race because, as we said, McLaren will have to pit twice more. McLaren or Red Bull only once more. So yeah, they have just, unless we get another safety car, unless that's what McLaren are gambling on, then Max has effectively won this race.
Yeah, and you wouldn't say this is a Grand Prix where there's a high risk of a safety car. Perhaps at the start, but during the race, no.
Only if we
I mean,
get
I
like
know
a
we've just
tyre
had one here.
failure. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, but it's just not very likely.
Yeah. For me, McLaren have just thrown this race away. And not only that, what's crucial for the championship, forget Verstappen, you've got Antonelli in there, Russell as well. They've also gained a pit stop on McLaren. And Mercedes are not slow to the point where they'll just easily, McLaren are just going to easily recover that, later in the race. So for Lando Norris especially, this could be absolutely disastrous, especially if Russell can get himself ahead of Hadjar, Alonso, and Sainz eventually. Sainz is in fourth. So the order is Piastri and Norris are leading, but they haven't pitted. Verstappen third has pitted. And then Sainz, Antonelli, Alonso, Hadjar, Russell, Leclerc, Behrman, Lawson, Sonoda, Albon, Hamilton, Bortoletto, Stroll, Colapinto, Gasly, and Ocon. Gasly and Ocon are on the hard tyres, I'm pretty sure. Ocon, though, I think has just pitted again. So he might have gone back onto a set of mediums so that he's used two different types of tyre, which is a smart thing there. As they're telling Lando there, we need really good pace until lap 25, I think he said. Well, good luck with that. As safety car is coming in at the end of this lap. What can McLaren do? They put their drivers in a very difficult position, and a position that could be very costly for the championship. What are the McLaren drivers going to do in this next 10 to 15 laps to repair the damage? We're going to find out as Piastri gets going. Remember, no overtaking until the start-finish line as Max is right on the back of Norris as they come up to the final corner. And we are back. Underway. Oscar Piastri leads. Norris second. Verstappen third. Sainz fourth. Antonelli fifth. Alonso sixth. Hadjar seventh. Russell eighth. Leclerc ninth. Behrman 10th. And what will be most interesting is what is the pace of the McLarens on 8-lap older tyres than everybody else. And, well, we'll have to probably wait 3 or 4 laps to find that out. As the field have all got away in order. As Gasly's actually down to 19th. Ocon did go into the mediums and has overtaken him. So, let me just update that. But yeah, this is going to be very interesting now as Piastri has already pulled a second on Norris. Verstappen about 1.2 seconds behind Lando.
Well, I mean, Piastri's done a purple first sector on the safety car restart, so that's pretty good going.
Yeah, he's absolutely gone for it. And Verstappen, I've got to say, he's having quite a poor final sector here. Look, he's dropped 2 seconds behind Lando Norris. Verstappen has got no pace on this restart. And on lap 12, yeah, he's 2 seconds behind Norris. And is, 3 seconds behind the leader already. Does Oscar Piastri, a 1:25.0 fastest lap. What a restart that is.
Well, McLaren are well and truly showing their pace now because before they were doing a 26.5.
Yeah, they've decided they've got to now push as hard as possible, but we'll see how much that'll hurt the tyres. As a bit lower down, Antonelli is right up behind Sainz. Obviously, the Mercedes is quicker. Alonso's got, obviously, the rest of the pack behind him. We've only been going for a lap and a half. But, I mean...
Oh dear. Ocon noted for failing to serve time penalty correctly.
Oh, great. That's so stupid as well, because he's literally at the back. It wouldn't have hurt them to serve it. So stupid. I don't know why teams still get penalties for this. As Verstappen continuing to drop quite far behind. Verstappen now 4.5 seconds off the lead. As Piastri 1.6 seconds clear of his teammate. The McLarens are in a completely different universe at the minute on pace. But at what cost will this pace... at what cost will it come to with their tyres? That's what we need to find out. But at the minute, they are lapping incredibly quickly. As we're looking lower down the order at Russell, Leclerc and Behrman in the back end of the top 10.
Wow. They've actually decided that something was a racing incident. Cannot believe it.
Good. FIA have been pretty poor. The stewards have been pretty poor on their judging of incidents, I think, this season.
I would use stronger language than that. They've been diabolical.
Yeah.
Especially Brazil and Vegas.
As Leclerc tucked right up behind Russell. Nowhere to go, though, for Leclerc, because Russell is right up behind Isaac Hadjar, as on lap 14, Piastri almost 2 seconds clear of Norris. Verstappen still dropping a lot of time. Verstappen is now almost 6 seconds off the lead. Max and Red Bull have got to respond to this pace, because if this continues, they're going to build a pit stops gap to Verstappen and the rest.
I mean, he's doing personal best lap times, but he's still losing 1.2 seconds a lap to Piastri. So just goes to show you how much of a rocket ship this McLaren really is.
Kind of reminds me of that time in Bahrain where Mercedes, was it in 2014, they decided to turn it all up, all the power up, and they ended up going like 3 seconds a lap quicker than the whole field.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the thing that's really a shame with Formula One currently, is these teams all could go miles quicker if they wanted to, but they're all managing constantly through the race. But, hopefully that'll improve in the future, but who knows? Probably not. As we continue to look at this battle, Leclerc and Russell. The problem for Russell and Leclerc is Hadjar is still within a second of Alonso, which is keeping Hadjar safe down the pit straight. As Piastri, 2.1 clear. Verstappen did not lose as much time on that lap, but was still quite a bit slower than Piastri.
Max much better with a 26.1. So 6 tenths to Piastri, mainly in the final sector, actually. But yeah, much better by Max.
As Antonelli, interestingly, has dropped over a second behind Carlos Sainz, who's doing a great job there in 4th place. But yeah, pretty much the whole field, all the way down to Gasly in last, are held up behind Fernando Alonso in 6th, who is, well, I think we all know what he's doing. He's deliberately saving his tyres as much as possible, which will benefit him later. He did this, I remember, back in Hungary, where he held up the whole field, basically, and was miles off the pace, and then suddenly he started to show pace later when he actually needed it. As almost on lap 16, the McLaren's still out there, still lapping quickly. As we're just seeing their Sonoda in 12th, who of course finished, I think, 5th in the sprint. And yeah, Hadjar still keeping himself within a second of Alonso, but nowhere near the back of the Aston Martin. So all these drivers who pitted on, what was it, lap 8, they can go until lap 33 before making their final pit stop, but obviously they're not all going to pit on lap 33. So I'd imagine all of these cars are going to pit probably between lap 25 and 33.
Well, no chance, because then they can't get to the end. This is the thing. They've all got to pit. They've all got to pit on that lap.
There's no way. There's no way that's going to happen. Some of these cars will have to pit sooner, I'm sure. I mean, theoretically, yeah. If they want to get to the end, they'll have to do that. But I think some of these cars, I'm not sure some of these cars are going to last that long on their tyres. And, well, Racing Bulls, who are tucked up behind Alonso, I think they might get impatient. Might go for a bit of an undercut, but we'll see. Maybe they all will. It'll be funny to see if literally, 18 cars come in on the same lap. But that's what the safety car's done. It's created a situation because of this mandated 25 laps per set. That's what we've got now. As out front, Piastri 2.8 clear of Norris. Max Verstappen is 7 seconds, 7.5 seconds,
7.5, yeah,
off the lead. So he's nearly half a pit stop behind Piastri. So even though he's slower, it's still looking good for Max, because if Oscar was to pit now, Oscar would come out probably, 13, 14 seconds behind Verstappen. And then they would both have one final pit stop to go. So Max would just have to make sure to keep himself ahead in the final remaining whatever laps. Obviously depends on when McLaren make their pit stop. So if he can, if Max can keep the gap to under 10 seconds between him and Piastri, then it's still looking very good here for Verstappen. But I think what is helping, though, with McLaren here is it's helping them build the gap to the rest behind Max Verstappen, because Carlos Sainz is already just over half a pit stop behind. So if they keep this pace up for another 5 laps or so, they'll be nearly a pit stop ahead of everyone behind Max Verstappen.
As I thought the pit stop loss was like 26.3 seconds. So if
Well,
that's the case, then he's just ahead of Gasly at the moment, is Piastri if he pits.
yeah, I'm not sure what the exact pit lane loss here. I thought the loss here was like 20 or 22 seconds, but could be wrong. As on lap 18, still, the whole field basically held up behind Alonso, who was doing a great job for the McLarens in holding quite a bit faster cars behind up. As Verstappen, 4.5 seconds behind Norris. Verstappen, it does feel like Max is getting closer to the pace of the McLarens. So
On that lap, last lap he was faster than Norris. So
yeah, so
you were very much correct.
if you're a Verstappen fan, it is coming back towards Max Verstappen, who still is on fresher tyres, and surely that will come into play in these final remaining laps before McLaren pit. McLaren have got to pit, I think, in the next 5 or 6 laps. So we will see the McLaren's in, as Piastri continues to lead by, I think, 3 to 4 seconds.
Yeah, and now Max just set a faster lap time than Piastri on that lap. So, yep, Verstappen now getting to the pace of the McLarens.
If he can keep this up and, well, start to catch Piastri, then that is, I think, pretty much, again, if there's no safety cars left in this race, that pretty much is, I wouldn't say guaranteeing a Verstappen win, but it's going to be very hard to stop him if he's, if the McLaren's come out and are 15 or more seconds behind him. As Hadjar has dropped, I think, just over a second behind Alonso. So we'll see if this continues until we get to the start-finish line. Probably won't. Alonso will probably slightly back off to make sure Hadjar stays within a second. As lap 20. And as it stands, in the World Championship, it will go down to the final race in Abu Dhabi. Piastri, as it stands, will be 15 points behind. But if Verstappen finishes third behind Norris, Verstappen will be out of the championship battle. But still, we've got just under 40 laps to go. So a lot to be decided yet.
By the time McLaren pit, they're probably going to come out ahead of Alonso. That's certainly what they'll be aiming for at the moment.
Yeah, Alonso, he's just backing the pack up beautifully for those McLarens. And yeah, Piastri, 3.5 seconds ahead of Norris. Max Verstappen lapping at about the same pace as Norris. Max is about 8 seconds off the lead. So Max has just got to keep this gap at what it is now, or obviously close the gap if he can, but if he can at least keep it as it is, then it's all looking good. But yeah, as you're saying, I think if McLaren wait until the absolute last lap that they can to pit, I think they'll come out ahead of Alonso, who is lapping a lot slower than the McLarens. But remember, of course, once both McLarens pit, the only car ahead of them will not be Max Verstappen. They'll also have Sainz, most likely, and Antonelli ahead of them. And then, especially Antonelli, he's not just going to give up the position, especially considering he also, because he gained a pit stop on the McLarens, he will also, have a reason to fight the McLarens, because it could all be very important in the end as to whether Antonelli finishes on the podium. So, a lot of work to do for the McLarens if they're to, again, repair the damage, and, well, a mountain of work to do if they're going to somehow win this race. Lap 22. Piastri saying front left is struggling a bit now. Well, no worry for him because he'll be pitting in probably the next 2-3 laps.
And they're comfortably going to have that gap to Alonso.
Yeah, Alonso still holding everyone up. Carlos Sainz is about 16, 17 seconds off the lead.
16, yep, spot on.
So they'll still have to contend with Sainz and Antonelli, but once they pit, they won't be that far behind them, so it's not like they've got to do a lot of catching first.
That's correct, yeah. And the gap to Alonso now is 24.4 seconds for Piastri. So
yeah,
Norris might end up getting stuck behind Alonso.
yeah. I mean, and surely McLaren are not going to pit Norris first. I say that, but they've done it before. I'm sure McLaren would prefer to pit both cars on the same lap. They might actually end up doing that because the cars are separated by, 3.5 seconds? So they might get away with that if they did that, but it's a big risk. As lap 23, Piastri leads by 3.7. Max Verstappen, 8 seconds off the lead. Carlos Sainz and Antonelli still within the pit window of the McLarens. And yeah, they just showed on screen 26 seconds is the pit lane loss, and Alonso is now 20, or almost 26 seconds behind. So yeah, Alonso is cleared. So both McLarens have got 2 more laps. So I'd presume Piastri's going to pit at the end of lap 24. And Norris will pit on the end at the end of lap 25. But as you say, Nib, Lando does not have the gap to Alonso. Piastri does. So Lando is going to have to absolutely thrash that thing if he wants to build a gap to Alonso.
Mm-hmm.
Because Lando is only, 22 seconds ahead of Alonso? I think. So,
That's correct.
Yeah. As Piastri comes to the line, begins another lap. And like I said, this should be the lap where Piastri pits. And McLaren absolutely must get this right because they don't want to have both McLaren stuck in that train.
You reckon they'd try double stack them on end of 25? I think that's what they'll probably do.
I mean, that's the logical thing to do, but I mean, if they get it wrong, it's going to be an absolute disaster. So I would go for it, but I don't trust McLaren to get it right. If it was Red Bull, then yeah, because Red Bull are the kings of pit stops, really, consistently. But I just don't trust McLaren to do it right. Saying that, Piastri is told to box, so they're not going to take that risk. As Oscar through the final corner. He doesn't pit. Oh no, the pit entry. I've played the F1 game too much around this track. The pit entry is before the final corner on the F1 game. I was thinking, why is he staying out? And no, the pit entry's after the final corner. Anyway, Piastri. Good pit stop, 3.1. And here comes Sainz and Antonelli, as Norris is now told to box. Then here comes the rest of the field behind Alonso. And yeah, Piastri has cleared him by about a second. So Piastri is in 5th on the medium tyre. So now we await Lando Norris.
And this is the thing. Norris could end up being behind Russell as well.
That's
He'll
the
be very
worst.
close on the pit exit.
Yeah, that's the worst place to be in the traffic, because at least if he was behind Hadjar and Alonso, he's in a much faster car. But compared to Russell, the difference is a lot less, obviously. But it's going to be close. As into the final corner he comes. Has Lando done enough? This pit stop could be the difference between him winning and losing the championship. Into the pits he comes as Max Verstappen takes the lead. And it's a great pit stop. 2.2 seconds. That is exactly what you need from your team. But will he get out ahead? I think he might actually get out ahead of Alonso. He does. Just about. And yes, he's done it. Alonso has just come up behind. That worked out perfectly. And that is down to the McLaren pit crew. If that pit stop was as slow as what they had for Piastri, he would be at least behind Alonso, maybe even behind Hadjar. So there you go. That could have won him right there the World Championship. Maybe not this weekend, but next weekend in Qatar. So, Max Verstappen leads from Carlos Sainz in 2nd, Kimi Antonelli 3rd, Piastri 4th, Norris in 5th. Verstappen, Sainz and Antonelli have done 19 laps on their tyres, so they've got 6 more laps to go. And obviously Piastri and Norris have just pitted. So the top 5 all have to pit again. Well, the whole field has to pit again only once more. So McLaren have now got to push as hard as possible and get after the cars ahead if they want to win this race. As Stroll under investigation for speeding in the pit lane, so that's a penalty. As Stroll didn't actually see that he pitted. So there you go.
Well, that was some pit stop by McLaren.
Yeah, that was absolutely perfect. That's where the pit crew can decide your race in a situation like that, and they got it absolutely spot on. McLaren used to be, when I started watching F1, McLaren were pretty poor when it came to pit stops, but these days they are incredibly good. As Stroll 5-second penalty, obviously, for speeding in the pit lane. So, Piastri in 4th is 2.8 seconds behind Antonelli and catching on now lap 28. The best thing for Antonelli to do is to get himself within a second of Carlos Sainz if he wants to protect himself against Piastri. He is catching Sainz, but not quickly enough, as Verstappen out front, 14 seconds clear of Sainz. And yeah, the only way McLaren are winning this race is if we get a safety car or a red flag. Because Verstappen, there's no way they're going to catch Verstappen up. As Piastri pretty quickly now catching Antonelli. And like I said, Antonelli, he's not going to just let Piastri through. I hope he doesn't, because this is 4th position and they both have to pit only one more time. So this could be the difference between a possible podium for Antonelli. But Oscar is catching him pretty quickly. Second a lap, if not more, as they come to the final couple corners. As we're now lap 29.
It's 1.2.
Yeah. It's going to take some defense from Antonelli to keep Oscar behind. As, yeah, we're lap 29, pretty much halfway through the race. Just wanted to say, if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe for more content like this, because we'll be doing plenty more watch-alongs, obviously, next year. And as well, make sure to smash the like button if you haven't already. And make sure to stick around until the end of the race, because we want to hear from you guys as to who you think driver of the day is. Still quite a while to go before we obviously decide on that. But yeah, Piastri now just about within a second of Antonelli. The only benefit for Antonelli is he was the fastest car down the pit straight in qualifying. So maybe that will help him. But Piastri is incredibly quick on these fresh set of tyres. As they come through the final couple corners. And Oscar looks like he was going to run slightly wide there, but he kept it together. Is he close enough to Antonelli through the final corner? Not sure. Antonelli got a good exit. And down the pit straight, look at that. The McLaren is not really gaining that much with DRS. Is Antonelli going to... Nope. Piastri dives for the inside. Does Antonelli come back up the inside? No. That was a very ambitious dive. But he had to make it. And Piastri is up to 3rd. And now he's only got a couple seconds up the road to overtake Carlos Sainz, who could very well, at this rate, finish on the podium and take his 2nd podium of 2025. And yeah, great move, important move from Piastri.
I'm surprised they didn't cut to that replay camera live. To be fair, if it was before the Singapore Grand Prix, they would have.
As Leclerc, I don't know what the radio just said. They said check every lap something.
He's trying to dib-a-dob Russell into getting track limits warnings.
Oh, okay. As lap 31, Piastri now just over a second behind Carlos Sainz. Like I said, Carlos is driving so well, but this also frustrates me. Where was this guy up until Baku. Because this is a completely different driver. If he was like this from the first Grand Prix, he could have had a few podiums this season. He's been incredible this weekend, and like I said, it frustrates me.
Now, the issue with McLaren having to clear this traffic is now Piastri hasn't gained at all since the pit stop. So that will be good news for Mr. Verstappen.
Yeah, it pretty much guarantees that Max can't be stopped. Unless, like I said, another safety car or red flag for whatever reason. Max is 18 seconds clear of Piastri. So when Max pits in a couple laps, he's going to come out, 8 seconds, 9 seconds behind Piastri, which is nearly the gap it was to Verstappen when Piastri pitted, as Max is now told to box at the end of lap 32, which he's just begun. So, yeah, Verstappen in a comfortable position as Piastri gaining in on Sainz. Antonelli, for some reason, moving offline there. But thankfully, he doesn't allow Lando to mug him off into turn 1. And can Norris take Antonelli in the way Piastri did, which was very convincing and authoritative? Lando may have improved his form in the last few races, but he is still inferior to Piastri when it comes to wheel-to-wheel racing. But
well, it doesn't matter because everyone has to. They're all going to pit in this lap. So
McLaren have to pit again, so maybe maybe they'll come back at McLaren somehow, or at least Antonelli, who I feel like Antonelli has a lot more pace. As there you go, Verstappen pits. I'm sure Russell has a lot more pace in 8th, because I mean he's been one of the quickest drivers this weekend. So yeah, Mercedes, I'm just baffled really by why they're so slow. As Max goes on to a set of hard tyres, Carlos Sainz also pits, and Antonelli will as well. And you're right, they're all going to pit on the same lap as the McLarens return to first and second. But McLaren, as all these teams make their final pit stops, McLaren still have to pit one final time. Cheers, by the way, to Pirelli for creating such an exciting race. And yeah, Max Verstappen has come out 7.5 seconds behind Piastri. So yeah, the gap is the same, if not slightly shorter, between Max and Oscar than it was before Oscar's pit stop. As Lance Stroll there is up to 11th, but Stroll has to pit again and has got a penalty. So yeah, as Esteban Ocon has stayed out. Ocon, I think, has to pit. Yeah, he does have to pit again. He'll pit probably in a couple laps' time. So, yeah, lap 34. McLaren's leading, but Verstappen is really the real race leader.
24-1, not bad.
As so Alonso is 7th, and it's Hadjar, Russell, Leclerc, Stroll up to 11th. Obviously, Stroll pitted a few laps ago. He's kind of undercut some of those cars. And then Lawson, Sonoda. Behrman has really lost out. He was in 10th. He's now 18th. So Behrman has off Russell there with the break for the Racing Bulls of Lawson. But yeah, Behrman has massively lost out because of, and yeah, unsafe condition. He was been noted, so they may have released him, and then he may have had to stop. So yeah, disaster for Behrman when he was heading for a really good points finish. Albon 14th, Hamilton 15th, Portoletto 16th, Colapinto 17th, and then Behrman 18th, Gasly 19th. The field, though, is a bit more spread out now. They're not all stuck behind Alonso, so hopefully we'll get some racing further down the field, but we'll see. I'm not feeling very optimistic about seeing two cars side by side between now and the checkered flag. But let me just correct all the tyres.
And Verstappen already about 4/10 off the pace of the McLarens. So, yep. Unless, as you say, safety car happens or something mental happens, Verstappen should be cruising to victory.
Yeah, and if he does win from Piastri second, Norris third, what it means is that all three of the top three in the championship will have a chance to win the championship in Abu Dhabi. Verstappen will be 15 points behind. Piastri would be 19 points behind. So Max would overtake Piastri in the championship up to second. But Lando, as long as Lando, if it finishes that way here, then Lando would just need to finish in fourth in Abu Dhabi and he would be champion. As we're on lap 36 now. And yeah, at this point, we're just waiting for the McLarens to pit. And then
Cheers.
the race is over. So
Lap 49.
I mean, because they know they've got to pit again, I would probably bring that pit stop forward to give them maybe a chance or enough laps to maybe catch Verstappen. Or, as God, look at Behrman, absolutely assaulting his steering wheel after that. What happened in the pits? He got he drove off and then stopped again, didn't he? So
Yep.
I didn't quite see exactly what happened, but he is furious. And yeah, Behrman now 18th behind, and he's now even behind his teammate who's just pitted. So I'm sure that'll go down well. So Ocon in 17th place. On lap 37, only 20 laps to go of this absolute shit show in the desert.
Yeah, and Verstappen is now well and truly closing in on Norris.
Yep, 2.5 seconds behind. As Lando saying, check the car, it could be damaged. Pretty damaged. I went off.
He's made a mistake somewhere in the final sector.
One of the, yeah, probably penultimate corner grab trap or something.
He does love that gravel trap.
As further down the field, Hadjar has got back within a second of Alonso, which is either Hadjar being quicker or Alonso deciding to continue his abuse until the checkered flag. As Lance Stroll is in 10th. But Stroll, remember, has to pit again, so he's not in a real 10th place. As no further investigation for Sonoda for an unsafe release. as Verstappen continuing to catch. Here's the replay of what Lando did, and yeah, it's going to be at the penultimate corner. Oh no, it's the corner before that. He just slightly got on the gravel. His car should be fine from that. It was not as hefty a blow through the gravel as we've seen with other cars.
Jeez, that is a big moment.
As Verstappen has now got the gap under 2 seconds to Norris. As Norris is now almost 7 seconds behind Piastri. Piastri has thoroughly thumped his teammate this weekend. This is the first weekend Piastri has comfortably beaten Norris since, Zandvoort, I think. So,
yeah, and I wouldn't say Zandvoort was really comfortable. I mean, it wasn't in because Norris retired, obviously, but yeah, it's been a while since he's been like comprehensively beaten like this.
As Max just gradually closing up, knows he doesn't need to overtake the McLarens. But Piastri, to his credit, out front is still giving everything he's got. The gap between Piastri and Verstappen is about 9 seconds, so Oscar still pushing for all he can to try do whatever he can to win this race. As in fourth, Carlos Sainz is now almost 4 seconds clear of Antonelli. Williams have genuinely been quicker than Mercedes in this race. It just shows you how good that Williams car has been this season. And remember, Williams have not really developed the car at all since we came to the European season in Imola. So imagine if they developed that car a bit. They could have maybe got a few more podiums, maybe in a surprise win. As lap 40, Piastri 7.2, clear of Lando Norris. But elsewhere in the championship, Mercedes are going to secure second in the championship, even if Max wins. I mean, I don't think they'll officially secure it, but pretty much they're already 41 points clear. And Mercedes currently heading for 14 points. Max heading for 25, as Behrman's been given a 10-second stop-go penalty for leaving in an unsafe condition. Very harsh by the stewards, but
So he's already done his 10-second stop go.
as unfortunately for Behrman, that means he'll drop to the very back. They may as well just retire the car after his penalty because his race is run. Williams, I think, will officially secure fifth in the championship if Sainz finishes fourth. And in the battle for sixth, Aston Martin, as it stands, I mean, Stroll is in the top 10, but he's not going to finish there. Lawson is in 11th, though, so he'll gain and go up to P10 and get a point for Racing Bulls. So Racing Bulls will score 9 points, or not 9 points, it'll be 7 points, and Aston Martin will get 8. So Racing Bulls will only be outscored by a point. And you'd imagine, unless Aston Martin have an amazing result in Abu Dhabi, Racing Bulls should finish 6th in the championship, which is a good season for Racing Bulls. As is a replay of Piastri, presumably having a moment at the gravel somewhere. And yep, same corner, but he controlled the car better than Lando did. So keeps it all pointed in the right direction.
about to say, I didn't even notice sector time lost there, so that's pretty impressive.
As Lando Norris now just over a second ahead of Verstappen. So Max, he's going to have a go at Lando, I reckon, these next couple laps. As Piastri begins lap 42. McLaren looks like they are probably just going to run until the limit on, like you said, lap 49.
Well, Piastri was saying to his engineer that he just wants to pit for the softs and have as many laps as possible to chase Max down. It's not going to happen, but I respect it.
Yeah. Alonso has just lost 2 positions. And there's something going very weird going on behind Hadjar, because you got Russell, Alonso, Leclerc all right up behind Hadjar. Alonso has had some sort of moment and has lost 2 positions. So Hadjar up to 6th, Russell 7th. Hopefully we'll see a replay. Russell is right up behind Hadjar and is about to overtake him. We should be seeing this instead, but we're not, as Russell does overtake Hadjar. So something's happened with Alonso as Hadjar gets back ahead. Why are we not watching this and pretending like everything outside of the top 3 doesn't exist? As there you go. McLaren are going to pit, but they're not going to pit for soft tyres. They're going to put the hard tyres on. As usual with FOM, we'll find out whatever the most exciting things happen in the race behind a replay or on YouTube or whatever. As Piastri drops to 3rd, he will be a net 2nd though. As Piastri comfortably comes out ahead of Carlos Sainz. But if Hadjar can hold on to 6th, what a result that would be. Racing Bulls have not added many top 6 finishes this year. I think only 2 or 3. Obviously, one of them was a podium at Zandvoort. As Verstappen is now right within a second of Norris, who surely is going to pit at the end of this lap.
Well, if Piastri can somehow gain 1.2 seconds a lap here, that would be great.
He's for people listening, he's 17 seconds behind with 15 laps to go, which is why he needs to gain that amount of time. And Lando, interestingly, stays out. So I don't know if McLaren are thinking, get Lando to hold Max up so that Oscar can catch quicker, possibly.
Well, I don't think they're doing that intentionally, but it always seems like they are. Because Piastri's gone half a second quicker in the middle sector than both Norris and Verstappen on this lap.
Yeah, it's as I didn't quite see actually. Yeah, Piastri's last pit stop was 1.8 seconds. Just proof of how great McLaren are in the pit stops. But yeah, like you said, not sure it's intentional, but they are giving Piastri a better chance of catching Verstappen. As Max getting a bit of oversteer there through turn 10. Now into the final sector as Piastri does a purple first sector.
Half a second, by the way.
As McLaren are now going to bring Lando Norris in. No idea why they left him out an extra lap. Completely useless, that was. But there you go. Norris in, and he will come out in 3rd.
Well, Piastri gained a second in the second sector, Chaz. So if they'd actually kept him out, oh boy.
I mean, it might have been because Norris is guaranteed to finish third behind Piastri. It might have been worth maybe trying that if they really want to get the win, but as Piastri does a 1:22.9, what a lap. And is 15.5 seconds behind Verstappen. He's still going to have to do a lot to get anywhere near.
Yeah, Verstappen has responded immediately with a purple first sector.
As Max being told now you're free to push. As Russell, black and white flag for track limits. Is it me or is Norris not pushing here at all? Like he's being very gentle. Don't know if you can see it,
yeah,
but
he took a lot of curb.
And that's what happened to Alonso. Spun on the exit of turn 10. When do you ever see that? Alonso just randomly spinning in the heat of battle. But he's lost 2 positions because of that. And then Russell tried to overtake Hadjar, went wide and into the gravel. Again, why didn't we see this live? For fuck's sake.
Yeah.
And now that battle is completely ended. And now Hadjar is just comfortably holding 6th place. As Norris better get a move on. Because he's not in 3rd, he's in 5th. Behind Sainz and Antonelli.
Verstappen responded with a 23.3. Sorry, 23.5, which was 2/10 slower than Piastri. So, yeah, Max has got some decent pace as well.
And I'm talking of Norris, they just said to Carlos Sainz on the radio that they think Norris will struggle to pass Antonelli because of the pace they're doing. And Norris, we've only got just over 10 laps to go. Norris is 3.5 seconds behind Antonelli and 6 seconds behind Sainz. So Norris is going to have to really get on with it in these final 10 laps, or else he's not going to be on the podium.
Yep.
And here's a replay of Norris into... Is it... I don't know if it's an instruction by McLaren, but is it me or is Lando just not... Like, on that outlap, it looked like he wasn't even trying. Like...
That's what it very much looked like to me.
Like,
I mean, he's trying now. He's matching the leader's sector times, but yeah, as you said, it looked very pedestrian. Whereas Piastri was immediately absolutely flying.
yeah, like he wasn't like like he was managing an issue or something. Like he didn't want to go anywhere, like try and push whatsoever into the braking zones. But he is now catching Antonelli. But like I said, he's got to catch him pretty quick because
and he caught him half a second that lap.
Yeah, and well, if he catches at that rate, he'll be right with Antonelli probably in 4 or 5 laps time. But he's got to make sure he gets at least onto the podium. He cannot afford to not get on the podium because, I mean, as it stands, he's in 5th. If Verstappen wins and Norris finishes 5th, Verstappen is going to be 10 points behind going into the Abu Dhabi race, and Piastri will only be 14 points behind, meaning that Max will only need to win in Abu Dhabi and Norris will have to make sure he finishes 2nd. So these are important final 10 laps for Lando Norris. As we've got 10 laps to go. Carlos Sainz, the reason he's pushing like mad is because he senses that he might have a slight chance at a podium. As, yeah, Piastri still catching Verstappen, but yeah, 14 seconds the gap. He's not going to catch up. Verstappen has got this 1-1. As Norris has got the gap down to 2 seconds between him and Antonelli.
It was a second on that lap. Lando's starting to go very fast now.
Yep, as they enter the heart of the middle sector. And another battle to look out for is Hadjar and Russell. Russell has got back within a second of Hadjar. As we're looking at Piastri, just coming through the final sector. But really, we need to look at Lando Norris, because that's where the action is going to be in these final 8-9 laps, as we're on lap 49 of 57. Verstappen leads, Piastri second, Sainz third, Antonelli fourth, Norris fifth. And like I said, Norris has got to get on the podium for his championship. He's not going to beat Piastri today or Verstappen, but he needs to make sure he's at least on the podium. But I think, well, no matter what Lando does in these final few laps, the championship is going to go down to the final race in Abu Dhabi. And you just never know what could happen in that final Grand Prix. As that's Antonelli locking up, I think, going into that hairpin. Lando Norris is now just a second behind. And Antonelli is going to have to pull off some defence, I think, to keep this McLaren behind, because it is a lot faster at this point. As Verstappen has begun lap 50. And now through the final corner, Norris. I don't know if he's close enough to overtake Antonelli. Yes, he is. Down to turn one. Will he send it like Piastri did? Nope, he's not close enough. One thing, though, he has to avoid is getting caught too long in the dirty air, because that will just hurt his tyres. And he'll be screwed. As Lance Stroll has finally pitted. So Liam Lawson now into the top 10. Lawson's not had a good weekend, but he's going to still come away with a point. So at least that's something for him. As Stroll is going to come out, I'm pretty sure, at the very back of the field. As Oliver Behrman, by the way, is out of the race. I forgot to mention that. So Behrman, a shame, because he was running in P10 for, I think, what, a good half of this race. As on lap 51, Norris is about the same distance behind Antonelli as he was the lap before. They come down to turn one, and Norris is not close enough again. Remember, Mercedes were the fastest team down the straights in qualifying. McLaren were, I think, 7th fastest team. So Mercedes certainly superior in a straight line, and the only thing helping Norris get closer is DRS. As Lance Stroll is now on the soft tyre in 18th position. But let me just update the tyre compounds quick. So everyone in the top 11 is on the hard compound tyre. And they got Albon and Hamilton on the medium. Bortoletto is on the soft tyre. And then Colapinto on the medium. As on lap 52, Norris, he's not closer. It's still about the same gap, but just over half a second if he can't get this move done, this could cost him the world championship. Because if he, like I said, finishes 5th, as Williams, or I don't know if that's Sainz saying potential damage on the floor, front wing is okay. That's a bit of a worry there for Sainz, who is...
Yes. Science said that he's randomly getting understeer in right-handers and he thought something fell off the car, but clearly nothing did. So, classic F1 driver.
Yeah.
Stressing over nothing.
As, if Norris does not pass Antonelli here and does finish 5th and Max wins, then it very well, Verstappen very well could win the championship in Abu Dhabi, because Max winning and Lando finishing 3rd or lower, which is what Max would need, is very much a possibility. As you say, Lando is dropped back in the dirty end. This is the issue I said. If you get caught up for too long behind traffic, you end up just following their wheel tracks and just getting stuck. And that's what has happened to Lando Norris.
Norris said, and I quote, "I'm not close enough. It's too difficult to follow." And to be fair, Antonelli is the 2nd quickest driver on track on that previous lap.
Yeah, he is. He is catching Carlos Sainz. He's got the gap under 2 seconds. So Antonelli still maybe thinking about a podium. As Verstappen is just cruising to the end. Piastri is pretty much doing the same as well. They've done their jobs. Their job was to beat Lando Norris in this race, but how much they beat him by is not of their doing. And Antonelli, who has a thing for going quicker on older tyres, like we saw in Las Vegas, where he was quickest man on track at the end of that race on, 50-lap old tyres?
It was ridiculous.
Yeah, that was... I don't think we've ever seen truly that level of tyre durability, especially from Pirelli. As lap 54, Verstappen begins, and Norris 7/10 behind as they cross the line. It's still not close enough. Not only is it hard to follow, the McLaren just doesn't have anywhere near the straight line speed. As Antonelli continues to catch Carlos Sainz, the gap now 1.5 seconds. These laps are so important to what could happen in the championship between now and the checkered flag next Sunday in Abu Dhabi. As Sainz and Antonelli continue to push on. And, unless Antonelli just suddenly falls off the pace there, and he's now over 1 second behind, I just don't see how Lando can overtake, can you? As he said, he just can't get close enough anywhere to Antonelli.
Nope, he doesn't have the grip to get close enough through that final corner. Unless Antonelli makes a mistake here, he's not getting past.
As they come over the finish line for lap 55, and he's the same gap behind as he was before. As Verstappen out front, it's got traffic that he's lapping, which I think is Ocon and Colapinto. As Leclerc telling his team to check the floor, he went wide. Leclerc heroically is dragging that car to 9th place, just ahead of Liam Lawson by a few seconds. As Antonelli into the middle sector, still catching Sainz by a few hundredths here, few hundredths there. As, Russell has passed Hadjar. Oh, Hadjar's got his tyre failure. Hadjar, his left front tyre has deflated. What a shame. He has lost 6th place.
Oh, dear.
And for Racing Bulls, that could be an absolute disaster. Well, Lawson will still score a couple points, but yeah. That means Sonoda is now in the top 10. Hadjar is pretty much out of this race at this point. Bit surprising because, I mean, he pitted on the same lap as all these others. So maybe caught some gravel or something. But yeah, that is such a shame. He's had such a good weekend. 6th in qualifying, 6th he was in the race, and now he's going to finish last. Or near the back, somewhere like that. As on lap 56, Antonelli is now within a second of Sainz. And now he drops just over a second behind, so Antonelli didn't have a great exit from that hairpin. And yeah, Hadjar, what a shame. He's going to finish last of all. They may as well just retire the car. As, Antonelli goes wide. And Norris is through. Lando Norris is up to 4th. I didn't quite see what happened there. I don't know if Antonelli's got tyre issues as well, but as we begin the final lap, that extra couple points that Lando's had, still hasn't made it back to the pits. That extra couple points that Norris has just gained there, that might be the difference between being world champion and not. As we enter the final lap of this Qatar Grand Prix, Max Verstappen enters the middle sector. Nib, a quick word before any more tyre failures for our race winner, Max Verstappen. Red Bull got it right, pitting, and Max never looks back.
Indeed, yeah, Max hasn't put a foot wrong. Great start, got past Norris, and then McLaren made the unforced error, didn't pit, and Verstappen has well and truly capitalised.
As Lando Norris is now only just over a second behind Carlos Sainz, he's going to still push after that podium. But here comes Max Verstappen. He's done all he can to push the championship to Abu Dhabi. He will be only 12 points behind as he wins in Qatar for the 3rd year running. Oscar Piastri, second. Piastri also will have a chance to win his inaugural World Championship. As coming into the final corner, Carlos Sainz. What a weekend he's had, and he's going to take his 2nd podium of the season for Williams. What a drive. 3rd, Lando Norris 4th. Horrible race for Norris, but still keeps himself in the championship just about enough ahead. And that late overtake on Antonelli could be the difference in the end. Antonelli 5th, Russell 6th, Alonso 7th, Leclerc 8th, Lawson 9th, and Sonoda in 10th. And then Albon, Hamilton, Bortoletto, Colapinto, Ocon, Gasly, Stroll, Hadjar, and then your final 2 retirements, Behrman and Hulkenberg. But the championship will go down to Abu Dhabi, and the best thing about it is that all 3 of the top 3 have a chance to win the championship. And we will find out in just 1 week time who will be the world champion in 2025. Will it be the first championship for Norris, 1st for Piastri, or the 5th consecutive for Max Verstappen? We will find out, as that Verstappen fan is quite delirious in the grandstands, I must say. But there you go. Wasn't a good race, really, until the final few laps where we started to get some chaos, but yeah. Let me just quickly start up a poll asking you guys, who do you think is driver of the day?
Piastri is fucking furious.
Yeah, he clearly drove a race-winning race, but like you said, McLaren just got it wrong. I'm actually going to change the poll. I'm not going to ask who's driver of the day. I'm going to ask you guys, who is winning the championship in Abu Dhabi? Remember, Lando Norris is 12 points clear of Verstappen, and Piastri is 16 points behind in third. So let me know, who wins the championship in Abu Dhabi? I want to see who you guys vote for. I still somehow think Norris will just do enough, but he really had me thinking there that Max might pull it off in Abu Dhabi. But yeah, there you go. Let me know. Let us know who is winning the championship. At least, though, we're going to have a title decider in Abu Dhabi. The first title decider in Abu Dhabi since 2021. So, we'll see what goes down. Yeah, terrible race, Niv. But who would you go for as your driver of the day? For me, it's got to be Carlos Sainz. But who are you going to go for?
Sorry, I was just listening to Oscar's on board. I didn't hear a single word you said.
I was just asking, are you going for driver of the day?
Piastri.
Yeah, I think the options for me driver of the day, obviously Verstappen, Piastri, Sainz, Hadjar as well deserves a big shout out. But I think I'll go Carlos Sainz because his pace was very impressive today. He, Mercedes were genuinely slower than Williams, and Carlos did a great pace. So yeah, congratulations to Carlos Sainz. As Todd's saying in the chat, Max needed that sprint win. Yeah, if he had won that sprint, Verstappen, then the gap would be, what? Be 9 points right now. But, yeah, I still, as I said, I still think Lando gets the job done because with how quick that McLaren car is, I just don't see how he can't at least finish. He has to finish in third in Abu Dhabi to win the championship, regardless, of what Max or Oscar does. And surely the McLaren car will be quick enough to do that. But, I mean, they should have been easily quick enough to finish third there, and he wasn't. So, and the next track, Abu Dhabi, I don't think will suit McLaren as much as this one. They'll still be very quick, but they won't be as quick compared to the rest. And, I mean, Max, I'd be very surprised if Max doesn't win the next or the final Grand Prix. So, yeah. We will see what Lando Norris is able to do. First last fall says McLaren are clowns. Exactly. I mean, when you're within, even if it's early in a pit window, if a safety car comes out, you pit. That's just, I mean, they do that in America, don't they? Every time the pace car comes out, they pit because it's just such an advantageous thing. Pretty much the same in F1. Every time a safety car comes out, you have to pit. There's very rare moments where if you don't pit, it actually works out for you. So I'm just baffled as to why they did that. I mean, yeah, it gave McLaren more flexibility as to when to pit, but they lost an entire pit stop. I mean, if they had only lost half a pit stop, if it was a virtual safety car and everyone behind them pitted, they probably still could have won the race. But if you give away an entire pit stop, unless you've got like a Mercedes 2014 car, you can't repair that damage. You just can't. Rook saying Ferrari grade strap for McLaren pit wall take. McLaren are also not very good with strategy choices. We've seen this the last couple years. They regularly get it wrong. Todd says, I want Max to win, but I think Norris will do enough. And as Looney Classic says, Norris just has to finish on the podium in Abu Dhabi to be champion. Anushka, I think, says, mate, how did McLaren blunder this so bad? Yeah. I mean, it's not like only a couple other cars behind pitted. The whole field pitted because it was so obvious to pit. So, and when the safety car came out, McLaren, I'm pretty sure, had time to react and get both cars in. They weren't that. Yes. I don't think they had gone past the pit entry by that point, so I don't think they could use that excuse.
No.
So, yeah, just got it massively wrong, and it's completely cost them what should have been a comfortable race win and a 1-2. Well, looking at the poll, I must have a very Dutch fan base because one man in particular is absolutely crushing it in the poll currently. I'll give it another couple minutes before I finish up the results. Todd says the biggest winner is Netflix. Indeed, I'm sure their cameras will be everywhere in Abu Dhabi. Let me go up a bit. Todd saying, is Kimi quietly becoming the number one at Mercedes? I wouldn't say that, but I think he is starting to figure it out now. Which is, if Mercedes, have a championship winning car next season, which they very well could, that's great timing for Antonelli if he, has figured it out, because he could very well be a world champion next year if it all falls into place. So we'll have to see next year, though, because it's only been the last 3-4 races where he's been ahead of Russell, really. Antonelli, though, I think has now overtaken Lewis Hamilton in the championship. Oh no, he's only a couple points behind. So he would have overtaken Hamilton had he had hung on to fourth place. And I've just seen a replay there of the mistake. It was such a poor mistake from Antonelli. He literally just lit the rear tyres up coming out of turn 10 and had a massive snap of oversteer. Really simple error that they're just showing on the Sky F1 broadcast, and yeah, gave Lando the position. Astra saying Oscar's title hopes alive, main thing for me. When was the last time we had a 3-way title decider? Well, 2010 we had 4 drivers. Be 2007, wouldn't it? Raikkonen, Hamilton, Alonso. That was the last 3-way decider. And obviously that was where Raikkonen overturned today would be equivalent of a 37-point deficit in the final 2 races. So, yeah. It's kind of a similar season to 2007 where the 2 McLarens, in the latter part of the season kept giving away points. And then Raikkonen just swooped in right when McLaren started totally fucking up, won the final 2 races and won the championship by a point. So it was, very similar thing could happen in Abu Dhabi, but we'll see. But there's been just over 150 votes, and it's pretty clear who you guys think is going to win the championship in Abu Dhabi. 156 votes. 81% of you think Max Verstappen is going to win the championship. 10% for Norris. 9% for Piastri.
Oh my.
In terms of drama, yeah, it would be great if Max won the championship because of the turnaround, being 100 points behind, but we'll see what happens in Abu Dhabi. I cannot wait for it. And make sure to join us, guys, for the race next Sunday. 1 p.m. UK time is when the race starts. So, yeah, cannot wait for the final race, the title decider in Abu Dhabi. Exactly what we were all hoping for at the start of this season. Nib, cheers for joining me for tonight. And, not total misery. It's actually been a great day for you, hasn't it? Liverpool have won, and Piastri's still got a bit of a chance of winning the championship.
Oh, he's got no fucking chance because of these clowns at McLaren, mate.
Oh, God.
But yes, Liverpool won a football match. I'm over the moon. And in fantastic news for you, Chelsea are 1-0 up, down to 10 men to Arsenal.
Yeah. That is great
Chalobah
news.
from a corner.
I just saw that it was 0-0 like 2 minutes ago. So, yeah, I've just put it on now. God, hopefully we can hang on for this. But with 10 men, it's going to be difficult. Yeah, cheers for coming on. And you're going to be on next week, aren't you?
Yeah, I'll be on. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, make sure to join us, guys. Next weekend, I'll be live, as usual, 2 hours before the race starts at 11 a.m. UK time for the usual build-up. And then the race watch-along itself. Make sure to join us to find out who wins the title decider. Of course, I will also be doing a qualifying watch-along as well. I'll be live for that at 12:30 p.m. UK time on Saturday, an hour and a half before qualifying starts. Of course, qualifying, also very, very important for the race and the championship. But yeah, thank you for joining us, guys. Been great to see you all this weekend. Hope you have a good week in between this Grand Prix and the next one. Just a reminder, if you've missed the watch-along or most of the watch-along, I am doing a podcast tomorrow where I will be reviewing what's happened here in Qatar. So make sure to join or check that out. That'll be tomorrow night. And then, like I said, qualifying and race watch along next Saturday and Sunday for the final race. And if you somehow miss the streams next weekend, there will be a podcast on the day after the race on Monday where I'll go through whatever, hopefully, crazy things happen in the final Grand Prix. But yeah, cheers for coming along for all the content, guys. Make sure to subscribe if you're new. Smash a like button before you go. But until the final Grand Prix of the season in Abu Dhabi, where we will decide who out of Lando Norris, Max Verstappen and Oscar Piastri will be world champion, make sure to join us for an unmissable decider in Abu Dhabi. Until then, guys, it has been me, Shazza HD. Goodbye.